Mike won't let me start. I want to start on time. I told him I could just talk until it's time to start. He said, well, I don't want you to start until it's time to start. Oh, well, let me go through it right now. Yeah. One moment. Okay. Dickey, number 1. So I just say you're number 1. Number 2 is Ursula. Number 3 is Bill White. Number 4 is Kelli. Number 5 is and number 6 is Barbara Weir. Number 7 are Jeff and Tim. And then we have a brief intermission, about 15 minutes, maybe 10. Then the second half, 2 numbers wide, are number 1 is a little surprise on screen. Number 2 is Garrett Moore. Number 3 will be Linda Posner. Number 4 will be Bill. Did I ever mention you, Bill? You were number 2. Excuse me, I skipped you. You were number 2 in the second half.
After the special show?
After the special show. You're after the special show. Yeah. And then I'm the last person. I'm number 5. Okay. You didn't get a printed program tonight, and I'm going to just give you a little explanation why. First, we always like to request that everybody turn off their cell phones or turn them down, or at least we don't want to be disrupted by that. But this year has been a very unusual year, and this is Speakeasy VIII, so this is the 8th one of these. And this particular year, after having had our COVID and not performing in person, last year we did a virtual presentation, which was videoed and probably is available. We could, let people know how they could see last year's if they would like to. But this year we decided we would go live again, and we were supposed to do it early in the spring, and then things with COVID were still kind of serious, so we decided, well, we'd put it off, and they gave us this weekend. And last week I had 16 people who actually really wanted to participate, and I think they still all really would want to. But between Sunday and Wednesday, I had 5 people cancel on me. And I was just like, oh my gosh, it's just falling apart on me. We had already put out publicity, and we were going to print up our programs, and everything was changing, and people were changing their titles. It was just like, I thought, was it a full moon this week anyhow? It was insane. It really was. And Wednesday, I actually forgot to bring my phone with me to town, and it was a relief. I mean, it was one of those things I thought, I don't even want to know what, it was just like, I'm going to be able to pull this together or not. Well, I have to say that if you're going to do a production, this is a very supportive theater. And, I mean, people came to my rescue from all kinds of places. And I'm really excited about what we've done tonight. I hadn't seen it myself until last night. I said, people show up and we'll see who's here and we'll put it together the best we can. And I came out of here just feeling like, wow, I'm really looking forward to seeing this show. So I'm glad to share that with you. I want you to know that our sponsors tonight, or our underwriters, are the North Coast Financial Group, and also the Community Foundation, who has given us several different grants to help us through during the last years. And I always like to appreciate Donna Viano, if you remember her. She's been gone now a while. But really did help us get through this time period by her, generous bequest that she left to the theater. Now, I'm going to try to tell you about this. Mike sent it to me, and on my phone it's very small print, but I want you to know that we really are trying to be supportive of our museum. And the County Museum is doing a show that's called Stone Stories. And I don't know whether you've heard it about it or not, but the idea here is that certain prominent people from Willits and the Little Lake Valley, people who had very checkered pasts, actually, are buried at our cemetery up here. And so they are thinking that they would like to bring this to life through some biographies, and she needs 8 to 10 actors. And the person is Karen Matson, who's organizing this. And she needs men, women, children, 12 years of age and up. So if you're interested, please check out the information that's out there on the theater's marquee, out on the patio. And I think that that's going to be an interesting program too. I think that one of the things that's going to save us is going to be the arts in our community. And I think that supporting our theater, supporting our art center, supporting our museum, and the things that make it worthwhile being here in Willits and getting off the freeway to be in Willits. And the library. Please, yes, indeed.
Book sale this weekend.
And the book sale is this weekend. And tomorrow you can get a bag for $3 a bag. And, it's definitely worthy. Okay, we're going to take it away. And the first person tonight is Dickey.
Hi, I'm Dickey Weinkle, and I'm not going to stand like this because Mike told me that it makes me look like an English guard. So I do want to start off with a clean joke that you can tell your grandma or your grandkids. Why did Captain Cook cross the road?
Why?
To get to the second-hand store.
Oh,
All right. So there you go. Okay. All right. So my talk is called "It Seemed Like a Good Idea at the Time." And I have a number of these stories that I've put together for my kids and my grandkids so they'll know that I wasn't perfect growing up. So, March 12th, 1963. I had gotten my driver's license the previous Monday. So this was 8 days after I got my driver's license. My dad, who passed away 5 years ago, always bought very fast cars. And he bought the very first split window 63 Corvette Stingray.
wow.
Yes, he did. Silver with red interior, 4-speed. It was not fuel injected. It had a 340 horsepower engine. So he went off on a business trip. And I thought to myself, yeah, I'm going to drive his car to school as a junior in high school. So I did. I drove his car to school, and I had track practice afterwards, so I didn't leave school till like 5 o'clock. Coming home, it was March 12th, it's kind of it's dusk. So coming home, I come down Dixie Highway, which is 45 miles an hour, and I come to the stoplight at 17th Avenue. A half a block up, you make a 45-degree right and then a 45-degree left to get on a little frontage road that goes back into our subdivision. Well, I'm at the stoplight and there's nobody else around, and oh yeah, so I just kick that thing into gear and I peel out and I go a half a block and I turn 45 degrees to the right and then I turn 45 degrees to the left and I spin the car. And the right rear of the car hit a palm tree. Oh yes, it did. So it was pretty loud, and all these neighbors came out and everything, and somebody called the police, and a motorcycle cop shows up, and naturally the neighborhood guy knew him, and he's looking at me, and he's writing me up. So I'm looking off up the highway, up to 17th Avenue, the light, and there's my mom's car. She had gone to the airport to pick up my dad from his business trip. So here they come, and the lights are on already, and I see him sitting there. He's kind of tired, and I see him do this. Okay, so they pull up, and that's the end of Act 1. Act 2. A month later, I have to go to traffic court. So my dad takes me, and we walk in, and there's the judge. There's about 15 people sitting there in traffic court. And the judge looked up and he goes, Mel Weinkle. And my dad says, hello, Judge Barron. They were in Rotary together. And when you're in Rotary and you get a new car, you get fined. Everybody knows that you've got a new car. So, judge says, my dad, he says, come back in about an hour. And, we'll take care of you. So we go, and I figured, hey, it's who you know. This is going to be great. So we come back in an hour, and we wait a few minutes. The judge finishes the docket, and we walk back into his chambers. He takes off his robe, and he hangs it up on a hanger, and he sits down, and he's got my file there. And he opens it up, and he says, Melvin, he wrecked your Corvette? And my dad says, oh, yeah. My dad says, well, what do you do in a situation like this? The judge says, well, this is pretty standard. And he says, he'll have to go to traffic school 3 Monday nights in a row. And then we're going to suspend his license for 30 days. And my dad says, can you suspend it for 6 months? And the judge says, sure. It seemed like a good idea at the time.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I went to Chicago to see my son last year, and so I took a train from Martinez to Chicago, 4 days on a trip. So finally I arrived at the train station, and they said, well, you want to get in the baggage car, we'll take you there. I said, no, I need the exercise. So halfway there, I met my son. He had long hair, greasy looking, beard. He looked like an Esau out of the Bible times. I didn't even recognize him at first until I heard his voice, and I said, oh, Misha, hi. And he says, you need help? And I said, yeah, here, take all this stuff. So we went, checked out, got my baggage, and went home. And since it was my belated birthday, since I celebrated here, so he had a surprise for me. He said, did you bring your formal? I said, yes, this is what I wore. And he says, well, Sunday we're going to your favorite restaurant, which is Ethiopian, and we're going to have dinner there. We're going to have an early dinner, and then we'll go someplace else. I didn't think anything, knew that we were going to go to dinner, and I thought, oh, that's fine. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Ethiopian dinner. It was like a big, pizza, but it wasn't. It had holes in there. It was brown like buckwheat, and it was good. And they had up there was cheese, and over here was some vegetables, and down here was meat, and over there was something else. And so you take a bite and break it off, and then eat it with your fingers. And it was really good too. So then after that, we went over to the theater, and I looked on the board, it said, Shenyang. I said, it can't be. Those tickets are about $200 or more. So anyway, we went in. They took, my son had selfies and took pictures of us and with front of the Shenyang. And we finally went inside the theater, and it was immaculate. Red carpets, red drapes, red carpet, red seats, just magnificent. And on the top was all gold engravings all the way around. And I just could say, wow. His new girlfriend says, well, how do you like it? And I said, it's the most spectacular thing I ever been into. And he says, well, you going to enjoy the show? And I said, well, I'm sure will. And then they brought the orchestra out, and they had Chinese and instruments, and also American instruments, modern instruments like regular violin and cello and flutes and stuff, and their old instruments too. And then a man came out on the stage with the woman, and she had on Chinese outfit on, just immaculate. They were just both beautiful people. So then they introduced us first in English, and then we got to hear it again, the same thing in Chinese. So I got to hear it in both languages. And then all of a sudden they brought in this people. The stage was just immaculate. It was just like being there, right there in the life. They had trees and bringing down flowers and birds flying across there and sitting in the trees and twittering and it was just, all I could say was wow, wow, wow. Mm-hmm. And then they brought these people in with jumps way up high and down there, and I said, how to do that, And then they brought in a scene that was teary-eyed, and that was because they got evicted out of China because of the Red Army. They were not allowed in there at all anymore. And then when I saw the play, I knew why. This 16-year-old girl had a birthday, and her father just came home from work. He worked about a triple shift, and he was going to celebrate with his 16-year-old daughter. And so he got called back to work. And he tried to talk himself out of it. Excuse me. And but wasn't successful at that. So he went back to work, and he told his daughter that he'll have to go back to work and you'll see her later. When he came back, all the kids were dead. They killed them. The Red Army came in and killed them all. And then all of a sudden, his father comes home and he sees all these kids dead, blinded, slaughtered. And they finally came back. The Army came back and took him back to stage and started torturing him and probably killed him too. And that was the most saddest part. Good thing it was short, that we didn't have long to dwell on it. And then they brought in some more acrobats and tumblers and with their costumes, it was just undescribable beautiful. I mean, the colors, the scenery was just like real. I mean, just wasn't like seeing TV. It was better than TV. And if I ever hear him again or see him again, I will try to get there. Either way, hitchhiking or walking, so I can just see him again. That's how great it was. Thank you.
Yeah. Podium is coming on.
Carried by Michael.
Podium on. Hello. Podium on, Michael.
All right. My name is Bill White, one of the two Bills. The following pieces are my titles, The Musings of the 11th Hour. And with memory gone and death hailing, so it is I'll be reading. So my first piece under this title is Kindergarten. Now people think I'm joking when I say kindergarten was the height of my academic career. Now when I left innocent and the imaginative world and led down the hall to the first grade, I came into the regimented world of desks and straight rows, all directed to the front, where our attention had to be, as in a boardroom. I felt out of place, and I was to feel so long after, until I could reflect and see myself on the road less traveled, which made all the difference. As I get on in life as a real latecomer, finally able to hail my awakening, I'm inspired by Tim Wu saying older Americans may be better equipped for serious thinking, as we can stand to be bored for more than a second. I'm from another time, and I didn't grow up with smartphones. Along with the stress and immediacy of life. It's so stressful. John O'Donohue, the notable Irish poet, said taste is one of the casualties of the modern world. Also, since we are under such pressure and stress, we have so little time to taste the food we eat. Food is love, he said. We have lost the sense of ritual, presence, and intimacy that were elemental to any meal. With this in mind, when passing McDonald's, I'm seeing a world of lonely, quick food that my parents were spared of. O'Donnell goes on to address something that puts me at ease when he says the fast food metaphor is also mirrored in our use of language. He said the tongue is also an organ of speech, and many of the words we use are the fast food variety in a rapid world. Since I've always felt a voice to be slower than the norm, I was gratified to hear it. It might have value of its own, as I'm looking at the hidden value of silence, which seems a step into darker unknown reach silence. I'm hearing that mystery arises in these shadowed landscapes, and I'm learning through O'Donohue the value of making space between our words in deeper conversation. The philosopher Mark Kinwell speaks about the most successful performers on talk television are not the ones with the truth, no, but are often the ones with the sharpest tongues. I've thought about this listening to some who have snappy responses and answers on the tip of their tongue. I don't want to be smart and sharp, only to have a bit of wisdom when I go. I'm still searching and have gone and come in the vulnerable space where I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But at the same time, I find it liberating to be in my own rhythm. It affords spontaneity with that scary creative option. Nevertheless, I find it a blessing to have a partner, a third person, someone to help with eyes on the road during these daunting times. So Dan comes along with me on that road I'm traveling. He happens to be invisible. He speaks through me, and as body goes, he remains near, reminding me to keep eyes on the road when traveling on my own life. I have another piece here.
You got about a minute and a half.
Excuse me.
No, I'm not.
Do you want me off? So you got a hook?
I was going to borrow Garrett.
You can have 5 minutes.
This one is called The Long Dark Road, something I came up with. I'm showing you what you have been going through to get to you know where. Only you can make some sense of this. Yes, it's mystery, and you will have a hard time putting language to it, but you must trust. It is truly your path. You are being loyal to yourself, going step by step. Yes, you will get out of step because you will be dealing with both worlds, the inner and the outer. You will be borderline. This is the place of entry. I come to you now because you have left the door open, and this is your time. Yes, You have been a slow one, but you have respected and are now giving an offering with your words. Unknowingly, following the dark way, loving the ambiguity of it all. It is the unlit way down through the valley where the soul thrives in the moist and feminine. The angels find you hidden there with messages of love and oneness with all, though often needing to raise their voices, you being in a melancholic daze. As Rumi says, it is the ferment of love that completes the wine. I want so being there to taste it.
Okay, do a poem.
If I let you do that, I'll get 7 minutes, and if I do that for everybody, Bill, we'll be here until really late. So,
Thank you, Bill. Thank you very much.
Kelli. My name is Kelli, and I'm going to share an event that thankfully was something so not eventful that could have been a tragic event, but it wasn't. So it was a regular morning as ever, and I woke up from a long, sound, restful sleep, and my husband said to me, there was a fire. And I said, I must have slept through that because I didn't know that. And he said, yeah, there was something that happened. I went downstairs. He said, I was laying here right when I went to bed last night. He saw a flash reflected in the dresser mirror. And then he saw flickering. And I was sound asleep. And he told me that he saw that flash and went down to check downstairs. And when he looked downstairs, he could see a flame coming from the floor to the ceiling. And he ran over to it with a clear head, not panicking, seeing a fire in a basket of dog toys, which was my backpack burning, which happened to be movable. So this fire wasn't as tragic as it could have been, Our carpet is wool and our curtains are cotton. And this was a basket that he was able to move. And he moved it all the way over to the door, opened the door, moved it outside, and there happened to be a fire extinguisher right there on the desk. Wow. He grabbed it, the fire extinguisher, he went back up the stairs, and he lay down in the bed next to me, and I was none the wiser until the following day. But I felt like the reason I'm sharing this story is because I felt like my life got saved. Because that basket where it was, right above it on the second floor is where I was sleeping. And if he had shut the bedroom door when he went to bed and laid down in the bed, went to sleep right away, he would have never saw that flash in the dresser mirror. He would have never saw the flickering. He wouldn't have went to check, and I would have been maybe burned alive. Who knows? I mean, it could have been a real situation. But we were very much trying to understand what happened, and why the fire happened, and what exactly burned. Well, I was thinking it was something of mine in that backpack. I had a metal hand lotion tube, like a vintage looking thing, and I thought I had some of these batteries in there too that maybe it caused a short. So I'm looking in the backpack, and there's my batteries in their safety case. Safe. They're just like this. These are like a lithium ion battery. And I thought that was what it was. It turned out it was a battery. But the battery that caught fire, I found it in the backpack, and it had been in the windowsill above the backpack and basket right there. And I guess the sun came in and shined on it all day, which made it hot or something and not safe. Because what I found was the guts of this, and inside here is like some copper tinfoil, very thin, rolled around like layers and layers and layers and layers, and I would never know that, but that had not exploded and all that. So anyway, the main thing I wanted to tell you about is that everything had to line up just right. And when I realized that everything had to line up just right, I was so emotional about that. I was like, it all came together to make me feel like my life got saved again for a reason, to make every day count, to live like it's meaningful, and to appreciate every single day because it's fragile. And beware of these guys because they will catch fire spontaneously, and yeah, these things are no joke. These things will catch a fire. And in our neighborhood, in this season, that event could have been so much more eventful. Thank God it wasn't. And that's all.
The name is Hellman, Stephen Joe. I'm here for Double Trouble. Want to thank Barb, who rolled in from Lakeport, and Tom, who came in from Como Bluffs, otherwise known as Fort Bragg. One thing is for sure, it's a good thing that I am completely sober. Whose idea was this? My students. I thought, I'll show them how a professional writer writes a monologue, brings it in, they look it over, they give me a few ideas of changes, corrections. I go home and memorize it. I come back to class and I start to recite it, and I'm hit with a cascade. Whoa, you're leaving out words and you haven't got it right at all. Like I got it all wrong. Well, I'm here to tell you, some of those students are in the audience. So just be prepared. The good news is I got this. I was 16 in the summer of 68 and still a virgin. Not a big deal. Not like it would become later on being a non-virgin. Besides, I had my first car, one my dad had bought me, a 1960 pale blue Plymouth Valiant with a slant 6 engine. It wasn't exactly a screaming hot rod, but it was mine. I tore out the ratty headliner and I glued in shag carpet left over from my parents' bedroom. I tore out the muffler and I put in a glass pack, and that slant 6 sounded like a serious hot rod. My friend Sam and I, we drove all over West LA, seriously looking to pick up chicks. We both wore these safari pith helmets, the hard ones with the domes and the white rims. We looked boss as hell. One time we went up into Beverly Hills and we were stopped at a light and I was revving the hell out of that glass pack. This red convertible caddy pulls up next to us, top down, with a fancy looking rich lady. She takes one look over at Sam and me in those safari hats, and she hollers out, "Kill any lions lately?" Well, my dad, being a Beverly Hills CPA, he had some interesting clients. That summer, he got me a job at the Blue Dye Factory. This outfit packaged blue powder into packets you hung in your toilet to turn your water a pretty blue. You'd pee yellow and then turn it a shade of green. And people paid for it. I was hired to sweep up the blue powder, and some would get on my skin and turn it blue. Weirder yet, it was all girls working in the whole big blue dye factory. They were seated at these machines that shot these little tubes full of stinky model kit glue, crimped them and spit them out for sale. In another part of the factory, they had the giant blue dye machine, all gears and rollers and arms pounding away, spitting out toilet packets. I was told by the one other male who worked in the factory that it was all girls because they were very good with their hands. They were dexterous. It was the warehouseman, Rowdy, telling me girls were especially good for one thing, having sex. He kept on me about it, on and on in his whispery voice and his stringy hair. All about how I should come over to his house and see what he had living under his roof. I could care less about what the people had living under his roof. But he kept at me, whispering all the time, once you had sex, it was like vitamins. You had to have it every day. Sometimes even twice. Well, one day I finally agreed to go over to Robbie's house. It was because of this tuna fish sandwich in my lunch sack. My mom had got sick and was in the hospital, and my dad had a lady coming over fixing meals for my brother and me. She fixed me this dumb tuna fish sandwich. We didn't have tuna fish at our house. We didn't believe in tuna fish. I wasn't going to eat any damn tuna fish sandwich, so I got to thinking, I should go over to Rowdy's house and see what he had to eat. We got inside his apartment, and there's a white sheet hanging down between the bedroom, between the kitchen, and the living room, which was actually a bedroom. It had a big bed, and lying in it were two completely look-alike girls, propped up and naked. They were identical twins. Rowdy introduced them, Gabrielle and Isabella. And he said that because they were deaf mutes, they wouldn't say anything back. They were definitely cute and naked. Ready and willing, Rowdy said. One patted the sheet and smiled at me. Somehow this was my big opportunity. But I had to think about that damn tuna fish sandwich in my lunch sack. And honestly, I couldn't see crawling into bed with two girls who couldn't talk. So I went back into the kitchen, took a seat. Damn, but I felt morose, staring at my lunch sack. Finally, I got up the nerve to open up that sandwich. The bread was all mush from the tuna fish juice and the mayo and the pickle juice. It was disgusting. I would have been okay, even without lunch. But when we got back to work, there had been a big model blue spill. I had to wipe it all up on an empty stomach. I got so stoned, I was seeing double. I didn't realize I was so jiggy sweeping up the blue powder at the end of the shift. I became a completely blue person. For a whole month, that blue dye stayed on me. And Rowdy kept on me about I was blue because I hadn't stuck to one of those girls. He said I had something called blue balls. It was sometime later on that I could see to becoming a non-virgin. But I could still see those two girls. And me standing there, staring at them. All three of us, speechless.
Okay. Trash can out front of that chair.
Barbara's on now.
Is it Barbara's turn?
As Bill said, this is a daunting time that we've been going through. And one thing that I've really appreciated as we've all endured this COVID bunch of years is that sign that's out there on the road. We're all in this together. And we really are. This town, this sweet, wonderful Willits is pulled together in so many ways, and we're all in it together. And I just wanted to sing to everybody a song that means a lot to me, that I never have had an opportunity to sing because I was too young to sing it when I was in Carousel so many years ago when I was a teenager. So, here goes. When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high, and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm is a golden sky and the sweet silver song of the lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone.
Good macaroons, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Want to introduce us?
My name is Finn Shipp.
And my name is Jeff Shipp. Excuse me. They're really good macaroons. We're going to talk about movies. A few years ago, Finn and I started a tradition. We were going to watch a movie every single night we were together. And we have rules that we made. Finn stays with me Saturday nights, Monday nights, and Tuesday nights. What were our rules?
On Saturdays, it was my pick.
Mm-hmm.
On Mondays, it was your pick. And on Tuesdays, it was either kind of a mutual pick or a sequel.
Yeah, that's right. Now, so that means Saturday, we were watching like Rainbow Bright versus Godzilla cartoons, weird things. Tuesday, a little sequel or Back to the Future 2 or something. But Monday nights, I could pick whatever I wanted. And he'd have to watch it. And one night, I said, we're going to watch Jaws. My family heard I was going to do it, and they said, no, you're not. But that wasn't the first horror movie we watched together. We actually have watched many horror movies, and it all started from one event. Do you remember what got started?
Well, we were in the Noyo bathroom.
That's right. If you're familiar with the men's room at the Noyo bathroom, no, that's not the horror story. If you're standing at the urinal, two gentlemen standing next to each other, shoulder to shoulder, as we are right now, just contemplating life. If you look up, what do you see on the ceiling?
Lined on the roof is of just a bunch of old B movies.
That's right. Remember some of them?
Like Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Frankenstein.
Them.
Yeah, and Godzilla. And I was looking at them, I said, some of these I've never even seen. We gotta be watching these movies. So we started a tradition of watching old B horror movies. And you remember the first one we watched?
We watched The Blob.
The Blob. Steve McQueen, a really wonderful movie. We learned something though. We learned that when you watch horror movies, you learn lessons for life. What did we learn from The Blob?
That if a thing falls down from space, don't poke it with a stick.
The beginning of the movie, this thing falls down and the guy's like poking it, it eats him. Obvious, right? We watched many other things. We watched the original Fly. Oh, so good, right? And then we got into Godzilla. What do you think about those?
Oh man, it was amazing.
The original Godzilla. It was a great commentary. It was made by the Japanese shortly after World War II. And it was really an artistic commentary for them about how they were dealing with the nuclear weapons dropped on them. So it was able to start a dialogue between us. And the beginning of Godzilla, before you even see the monster, there's a scene with a woman standing on a beach just clawing at her face, screaming in terror. It's horrifying. But what is she looking at?
She is looking at dead tuna.
Dead tuna floating ashore. Godzilla was radioactive and it was killing the fish, which actually, in real life, as we were testing all our nuclear weapons off of Japan, that was actually happening to the fishing industry in Japan. And so it was a great way for us to talk about those things. So we learned a little bit, but eventually we did get to Jaws. And my family's insistence on me not watching it with him. But I said, no, he can handle it, guys. And I said, I'm going to work with him first. So I knew there was one particularly gory moment in Jaws. And so I pulled it up on YouTube. Do you remember the goriest moment of Jaws?
When the captain gets eaten.
Right, you're thinking about it right now. I know you are. Yeah, but we watched it on YouTube. What'd you think?
I thought it looked like a robot.
It is. It's just a big robot, just right, and the captain's flailing his arms. But it's not really scary. It's gory, for sure, but it's not really scary. But Jaws is indeed scary. What is scary about it?
When you can't see him.
That's right. It's the suspense. It is the wondering. When is it coming? Where is it at? Is it coming from me? It's the sound. You can hear two notes. Do-do, do-do-do. Right? Just immediately. Heart pumping. Right? And we watched it though. Well, did you like the movie?
Yes.
We loved it. It's really great. But we learned something really great. Is that when you confront your fear and you can actually look at it and talk about it, it's not that scary. It just becomes a big monster just chewing on a captain. It's not that big deal. But it's when you don't know where it's at and what it is. That's when it's terrifying. So there's a lot of things in life when you're growing up that are difficult to talk about. And we had a term that we came up with for those things. Do you remember what that was?
The monster under the boat.
Right. So those things you're always afraid to talk about with your parents, like those 4-letter words. Like, if I say those things, Dad, what happens? You know, or my goodness, what about that 3-letter word that we were all scared to talk about with our parents? You know that one?
Sex.
That's right. Well, what we found out was that if we just talk about it and learn about it, it's no longer scary at all. And so that was our way of confronting the monster under the boat. So we thank Jaws for that conversation. But we didn't just watch horror movies.
We also watched superhero movies.
We watched all of them. What are some of your favorites?
I like the Batman, the Iron Man,
The Superman and Thor. We've seen all of them. We absolutely love them. But what makes a good superhero?
Their vulnerability.
That's right. A superhero must be vulnerable some way. Otherwise, it would be unfair. So what are some examples of superhero vulnerabilities? Like, what's Superman's vulnerability?
Kryptonite.
That's true. Now, but there's not a lot of kryptonite on planet Earth, so it's kind of hard to relate. What about Iron Man's really popular? Tony Stark, all those Marvel films. What's his vulnerability?
His heart.
That's right. So he had to rebuild that suit around him to help with his heart. Now, here's a tricky one. Wonder if you can think of what Batman's vulnerability is. Do you know what it is?
His emotions.
That's right. Bruce Wayne is a pretty depressed dude. He lost his parents when he was young, right? He's been trying to deal with that for a long time. So really great superheroes are vulnerable. That's what makes them attractive to us. So we learned that. And one thing that you might not know is Finn here, when he was born, about 6 weeks after he was born, he had open heart surgery. They recreated his heart almost like Tony Stark. And I myself have had a lot of emotional work in my life, if you know me, and that makes me a lot like Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
So maybe you and I, Finn, we could be the next superheroes. Just you're the next Iron Man and I'm the next Batman. So maybe watching horror movies and superhero movies is just a bunch of garbage for the brain, but honestly, when a father and son sit down and watch these things, maybe we can learn something too. Thank you.
Our plan is
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
we've got about 15 minutes for intermission. I think there are some of those cookies if you didn't finish them off. And there's also beer and wine and soft drinks. I'm not sure what else they have out there. Anyway, what a wonderful audience you are, and really, truly, only 15 minutes at the most.
Thank you.
Welcome back. We're going to start with a little dog. And there are a couple of people I didn't give credit to at the beginning that really need credit. I may forget to do it at the end, so I want to say this couldn't happen if it weren't for Mike Adair. He's just backed me up and helped me on anything I needed help with. And I appreciate we have Rory tonight doing lights, and it's his first time ever. And if there's anybody else that I haven't appreciated, I appreciate Steve Marston out there setting things up.
And Emmy.
Appreciate
you.
Emmy. Oh, second half. Here we go.
I am Hunter, the leader of the pack. My pack and I are here to share some dog food wisdom. It feels a bit like our world is heading into chaos right now. I find that if you focus on just one thing and do that one thing, the spinning feeling slows down and stops. You will then start to feel better. It's windy. There's the smell of food. A ball goes by. I hear another dog bark. I see a squirrel. This is just too much at once. If I focus on just the squirrel with all my attention, all the other things drop out, and I start to feel calm. So try pointing to a squirrel if you start to feel spinning. Hey, Lizzie, do you have some dog food to share?
Hi, I'm Lizzie Lizard. we start to like them a bit more. Like for me, I go to another dog like Grumpy and ask him if he prefers dry biscuits or chicken chews. Then he will of course say chicken chews, and then I agree with him. Before long, our tails are wagging, talking about chicken chews, and we made a new friend. So, next time you have a grump near you, find something you have in common, and before long, your tail will start to wag.
That was great, Dickey. Anything to add to that, Trixie?
Hi. I'm Trixie, or Chick for short. What if it was staring at boxes on the wall and boxes in your hand? Nothing really more interesting than going for a walk with an adorable, fluffy friend. It seems like more and more people are into staring and avoiding the world around them. I do not get it. Next time you feel like staring at a box, please just stare at your pet. We love it. We love it when you look at it. Call us silly names. Tease us about our gigantic ears. The best is saying the word walkies, and then going outside and taking crickets and digging holes and eating things, and you say, don't eat that. We love it all. Let's all decide to do more of that, and let's staring at boxes, please. I truly think the world would be a better place if you all did. Peace and love.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed our dog for wisdom, and that you all love each other more. And for goodness sakes, more treats and walkies for everyone.
Okay, Bill. Well, I'll turn this off so we can I figured out the sound problem, by the way. It was only coming out of the projector. Yeah. You guys on stage didn't need to hear it. You heard it the other night.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Bill Herr, and this piece is called My Baudelaire. When I first got to the Esalen Institute back in the 70s, I was fresh out of the Southern California singles beach scene. Where I had, a certain amount of success at doing, various things. And then I had the misfortune of falling in among evil companions, as my mother would have put it. And so it looked like as good a time as any to get out of town. And when I got to Big Sur at the Esalen Institute, I hadn't ever seen anything like it. Even though I was coming from the land of the bikini, there were like 3 gals to every guy at the Institute, and they were buck naked. Well, at least at the hot springs. And yet, even though I had quite a bit of experience at that point, I wasn't doing any good with the ladies. And it was, embarrassing among other things. But finally, an old timer at the Institute kind of took pity on me and took me aside, and he said, Willie, you don't seem to be doing too well with the ladies. And I mumbled something about being a slow starter. And he said, well, here at the Institute, gals are interested in guys with feelings.
And I said, well, there's nothing wrong with my feelings. I'm feeling pretty horny right now. And he said, well, yes, but what he was talking about was guys being sensitive. And I said, you mean like gluten intolerant or something like that? He said, well, there are a bunch of those kind of guys here, but what he was talking about was being able to talk about your feelings and that kind of thing, being sensitive. And he said the shortcut to convincing the ladies that you're a sensitive kind of guy, you might start off with demonstrating a little literary proclivity. And before I could say, well, that sounds like some kind of, I don't know, unnatural practice or something. And he said, no, you can go either of two ways on this thing. And he's rummaging in his backpack all this time. And he comes out, and he says, one way is with the great books. And he pulls out this book. It's like 600 pages. And it's a book called, well, it's by Umberto Eco. And it's The Name of the Rose. And I said, well, that book's a little big for me. You got anything literary? And he said, well, the other way you can go on this literary proclivity thing is poetry. And so he pulls out this thin, little, distinguished looking book. It's got a gray buckram binding, got one of those little ribbons in it to mark your place. And it's by this French guy named Baudelaire. And I said, yeah, well, that's more my size. What do I do with it? And they said, you don't have to do anything. You just keep it handy. So I do. And it's like a conversation starter. So you're sitting on the deck with your Baudelaire. Gal comes up and says, what you reading? And you say, you flash her your Baudelaire. And she says, wow. Chances are she never read Baudelaire. I mean, how many Americans have? Or how many Frenchmen have? But it's like James Joyce, Nobody reads him either, but everybody knows the name. And so I keep my Baudelaire handy. But, poetry's a strange thing. As far as I can tell, only the poet knows what he's talking about. I can make up a story. My story's as good as yours. And in fact, the only poem I know is one by Richard Brodick. Goes something like, nice ass. There's something lost. And there's something gained in these few words. Think about it. Thank you. And while I have your attention, I want to call your attention to something you can be looking for in your neighborhood. I've been in Willits for a couple of years now, and one of the most impressive things to me about this city is the magnificent redwoods in the city itself. It's a treasure. It's a real treasure. So be looking at those redwoods in the coming few days and be looking in particular for some small sightless spaces made out of ceramics. They've got no eyes. And if you see one, you're invited to take it to serve as a reminder to you to keep your eyes open to the wonders of Mother Nature. And if you find more than one, you might consider leaving any extras where they are to let somebody else in on this Easter egg kind of hunt. But if you want to, you can also take it and hide it some better place than wherever it is when you found it. And if you'd like, put a note inside. So keep your eyes open, folks. Thank you.
Is that me, Emmy?
Yeah.
Oh, go, girl.
I'm Linda Posner, and there are just some things that we do again and again and again. Why we do them, it just feels like we're supposed to do them. And I remember having a dream one night, and in the dream, there were the words "MUSINGS." And I woke up with MUSINGS. And in the dream, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it without falling down with the bright lights in my eyes, so I'll turn this way. I had this dream where, well, I'll try if I fall, it'll be part of my scene. And it was this prognosis. And I've been doing this now for about 40 years after the dream I had a dream. So it goes. No, I can't look forward. I probably do it every day. And I started doing it when I was doing a performance or something where I would get nervous ahead of time. Though I don't feel particularly nervous now, but I may be. I don't know for sure. But when I do it, I would always do it before anything I would do. I would do this like 4, 5, 10 times. And somehow it would just calm me down. I don't know what the words are because I think sometimes I think it's like the awe of praying, so more praying. I mean, I don't know, but anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you. Anyway, the other thing that I've never forgotten is a poem. I was, I think, 11 or 12, and I always loved horses. From the time I was taken to a riding stable, my mother took my sister and I, and that was it. I was 7, and from that time until I was 13, every day I begged and begged and begged and begged for a horse. I'll do anything. And so finally when I was 13, I got a horse. And it came in a card, and it said, the horse didn't come in the card. The card said, "Happy birthday to my new owner, Johnny." And I looked at the card and I went, "Oh, thank you. And my mother said, "Well, how do you feel about that?" And I said, "About what?" "About getting your horse. Read the card again." So I read, "Happy 13th birthday from to my new owner, from Johnny." So that started my riding. And then in school, I was always, speaking of riding, I'm talking about writing. I've always been really shy about writing anything. Ever since I had a teacher that I wrote something and she said, "This is terrible." So, yeah, I wish I could have done that then.
Yeah.
Anyway, I did give the stink eye to a teacher, Mr. Ellis, that I hated. He was so awful. And he said to me, "Linda Palmer," Well, I guess it's Linda Posner. Anyway, he said, Linda Palmer, stop looking at me like that. I mean, I would be sitting in class, I'd just be. Americans were a huge man who was always making us march into class and march out of class and march into there. Anyway, so certain things you just don't forget. You just remember them. And so when I had my horse and I was supposed to write this poem, and I was just terrified. So my mother said to me, bless her heart, she said to me, what about your horse? Tell me about your horse. And so I said, well, you know, Mom, I ride every day and I race home from school and get on the bus and go to the stable and ride. And she said, but how do you feel when you ride? And so I was trying to explain to her how I feel. So she wrote this poem. My mom wrote this. I'll ride it while I'm doing it. He was very small. Oh, he's very frisky. When I ride astride, my mother wrote this. When I ride astride in my world so wide, along paths untrod, I am led by God to a special peace where trouble cease. Where green grass grows and a soft wind blows, there would I stay till the ending of day. Then set my horse on a homeward course, renewed self abiding, life's meaning learned, just riding. Never forgot it. I was like 12, 11 years old when she wrote this, and I never forgot. Some things you just never forget, right? Never. And the other thing is, when, I hope I can do this one. My cushion is somewhere. When Pearl, I always dreamed that I would have 4 to 6 children. I loved babies. I was a neighborhood babysitter. Took care of all the kids in the neighborhood. And I remember when I was making out with my arm, you know how girls you do sometimes when you're cracking and kiss anybody yet, and you just make out with your upper arm. Not with this on, but you know, just. Nobody knows? Raise your hands if you have made out with your arm. Or something else other than a person. Oh! You know, anything but my arm or anyway.
No. But tonight is young.
I'll still have the opportunity. Anyway, I always dreamed that I would have at least 4 to 6 children. So, at 42, I had a baby. And she's here. Oh. The biggest blessing in my life. Yeah. And I always sat in a rocking chair. And I said to Pearl, not too long ago, I said, do you remember me singing this song? And I sang You Love It. And she said, I think so. I'm not sure because I sang it to her at different ages. Don't you dare. Now she has to. No, I heard somebody sniff. It's going to be me that stays with that. So I had a rocking chair, and I rocked, and I sang this song. I gave my love a cherry. It had no stone. I gave my love a chicken. It had no bone. I gave my love a baby with no crying. I gave my love a story. It had no end. How can there be a cherry without a stone? How can there be a chicken without a bone? How can there be a baby with no crying? How can there be a story that has no end? A cherry when it's blooming, it has no stone. A chicken when it's pippin', it has no bone. A baby when it's sleeping, there's no crying. The story of I love you, it has no end. The story of I love you, it has no end. Love has nothing to do with what we're planning to get. Only what we're planning to give, which is everything. What we get in return varies. It really has nothing to do with what we give. We give because we love, because we are love, and cannot help giving. That's Catherine Hepburn. So many little jingles and poems that we remember and love. Anybody think of one right now that you just always rehearse or repeat in the day just to do it? Do it for us. Nobody has any saying or any poem or little ditty from a song that just keeps coming and coming and coming.
I have one, but I would have to read it.
Well, I did show you. You did Back in the Road, right?
I did.
So I should do this from the road, right?
Yeah.
No one's ever felt sad, right? Or like, where do I go from here? Whenever my road begins to end, whenever I've got some dreams to mend, whenever I'm tired and want a friend, you always are there. Whenever I choose to look your way, that's when my darkness turns to day. Whenever I bow my head to pray, you always are there. And if I decide I want to love and share my life with you, I call and you are there with a love so true. Whenever my road begins to end, whenever I've got some dreams to mend, whenever I'm tired and want a friend, you always are there. You always are there. You always are there. You are everywhere. You are my prayer. Thank you for being in my life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being in our life. That's right.
Folks, I just want you to know that last night we didn't know who was going to be, what was they were going to do, what their topics were, and Garrett was going to be doing our filming for us. And he said, you know, I've always wanted to do a monologue. And I said, this is your chance. So, how many of you appreciate that he's videotaping all this and that it will be available for people? He'll be also...
Jeff's going to chip in as well. Jeff that left earlier.
Okay.
So I'm going to time myself because I could just let this get out of hand. We're going to go anecdotal today. So I got a preface with my life story, right? Okay, I was born in Balboa Naval Hospital, and then as an infant, I decided that we should move to Garrettville, Nevada. We did. I lived there until I was about 9, and then we moved to Evansville, Indiana. My grandma thought my grandpa wanted to move there. My grandpa thought my grandma wanted to move there, and we all moved there. But none of us wanted to be there. But it was okay because it was a great city to grow up in. Made it all the way through high school, 1 semester of college, and then moved to Southern California. And I was like, man, it sucks down here. I'm spending my Home Depot paychecks on dispensary weed all the time, and I'm bored as hell. What do I do? And I got a hold of my dad. He lives up here. He's lived up here for like 17 years, and I was like, hey man, you're working up there? Can I come visit? Let me see what it's like. And I came up here and started into construction and a little bit of gardening, right? We all know where we're from. Okay. And I called my family a couple months later, and I'm like, hey guys, so the rest of my family anyway. And I was like, I think I'm going to move here. It's amazing, the community, not to toot your horns. It's creative and fun and just like, what is this place? So I had to have one. So I moved up here. And I was here for about 5 years, and then I moved back to Evansville, Indiana, to establish connections. None of you are DEA agents, right? You have to tell me. It's a trap if you don't tell me, right? Not anymore. Not anymore. I'll take it. Okay. So I went to, connect with some of my old friends and see if maybe they wanted. Anyway, so I'm out there for a while, and my grandma passes away. And I flew back for the funeral and made out with my mom's girlfriend and came back. And I was still in a weird way. I was going through it, I grew up primarily with my grandparents, so that was a mom being lost, really. And so I started doing weird shit. Okay, I watch HBO all day, and then I'd go out at night and just walk around the streets and take pictures of creepy buildings and go to strip clubs, which brings us to Act 2, as you called it earlier. Yes, Act 2, time for Act 2. This is the meat of the story here. So we've made it through the history. Let's see what we got here. Oh, we're doing good. Okay. So I'm going to this one strip club because the other one in town had too many of my old high school friends in it. I didn't want to open that can of worms. I thought that could be awkward. I don't know. So I was like, okay, I'm not going there. I'll go to this other place. I don't know anybody. And I met this one gal. She worked there. And, I just liked her style, and she was nice, just friendly, and so I started paying her for dances, right? The private stuff. And so there's one thing I want to touch on, and then, no pun intended, and then we'll get to another event that happened in tangent to that. So one of the times I paid her for a dance, and she was, doing the stripper thing, and was coming in contact with me, if you will. And she told me, sorry for the language, Ben's not here anymore, right? She said things along the lines of, "Oh, your dick's so big." It's like, great, we want to hear that. Except it completely tripped me out. Because I'm like, what am I supposed to make of that comment? Right? Okay, think about this with me for a second. It's her job to say that. She should say that. But what am I supposed to make of it? Is it small? And that made you feel the need to tell me that. Right? Now what am I supposed to do? I don't know. I don't have anything to compare it to. I'm not at the urinal, so I don't know. That was a trip all in itself. But I still liked it. And we agreed to go on a date. Again, I have no idea what to make of this because, what's happening? I'm not rich. I'm paying bills with my illicit money. And, you know, I have just enough to go to the bar with my friends and pay a few college gals. And so we agreed to this date, and I've been depression thrift shopping at the time. I'm sure you all know how that goes. And so I start buying like clothes that I won't wear. They're ladies' clothes, and I'm like, yeah. So now I'm like, oh, I'll shop for this gal. And I ended up standing up the sex worker friend for the date. And I honestly had no idea if she went. We might have stood each other up. I don't know if it was ever a real thing, and I never will. And unfortunately, there is no moral here. That's the end of the story.
5 minutes, 30 seconds.
Very good. I did. Yeah. We liked it.
I'm going to tell you about my Samoan remembrances. I have to admit that when I did this, I at the time thought, I can't cut this down to 5 minutes, and so I wasn't going to do it. But when I thought I had lots of time, I thought, well, I'll do it. And then tonight, you're going to have to drag me off because this is not a 5-minute story. So anyway, I will try to make it as tight as I can because I know that we are getting late. Anyway, little did I know, the year was 1984, and my older son, David, who was about 22 at the time, was sitting there spinning a globe, and all of a sudden he said, that's it. That's where I'm going. I'm going to Samoa. And sure enough, he did. So when he got to Samoa, his luggage didn't arrive with him. And so he went to a local store and he bought a bathing suit. And a nice girl waited on him, and he was kind of interested. I think he was going to Samoa, basically, hoping for women. Anyway, the second day his clothing, his luggage still hadn't arrived, so he went back and he bought some more. And he's again kind of checking her out. Well, on the third day, still nothing had arrived, but he had gotten up his nerve, and so he said, do you think you'd like to go out to lunch today? And she said, oh, no, I cannot leave my little island. And he's going like, I'm just asking you for lunch, you know. And she said, I'm sorry, I cannot be alone with you. Her father was the chief, and there was only one way that he was going to be able to be with her, and that was if her mother and father were present. And so, fortunately, her father owned the golf course, and my son was quite a golfer. And so he sort of courted the mother and father, and it got to the point where he could be there, and she was there, and they could talk. Anyway, I thought he had a very nice trip to Samoa when he came back. But about a month later, I got a phone call, and he was saying, save November 10th. I'm going to Samoa, and we're getting married. And I went, huh? I mean, you know, just met her. I mean, you don't even know her, you know. You can't just get married. And he said, well, she's from Western Samoa, and she doesn't have a green card, and the only way I'm going to be able to bring her to the United States is if we get married. And I said, well, I am sorry. At that time, we had a very successful business. We were doing a lot of traveling and trade shows and that kind of thing, and especially November 10th, around, you know, Christmas, big rush. So I said, sorry, I'm not going to be there. Anyway, about an hour later, my mother calls and she said, oh, yes, you are. And I will meet you there in Samoa. Okay, and I really did want to be there, but it was just not very convenient. Well, I had my ticket, going to meet her, meet my son in Samoa. About 3 days beforehand, my face just swelled up. I had eaten something and my face just huge swelling up, and it was extremely painful. And after a little while, it went down and went away. And then the next time I ate, again, it just swelled up and it was painful. And I thought, what am I going to do here? Anyway, I decided I better go to the doctor. I went to Old Howard Hospital, and the doctor was a friend of mine. He said, I think you've got, just like some people get kidney stones, well, he said, I think you've got a stone in your saliva gland. And so whenever I would eat, it would just swell up like this. And really painful. And he said, I'm afraid that we're going to have to remove that surgically. And I said, well, I can't do that. I'm going to Samoa. My son's getting married. He said, well, you know, I don't think you're going to go that way. And I said, well, I've had experience fasting, and I fasted up just the week before, and the only time it bothers me is if I eat something. So, you know, I just drink water, I'm going to be okay. He said, well, I don't like the idea, but he said, I've got a doctor friend in Hawaii, and I don't think I could do anything for you in Samoa, but if you have any problems, he said, get back to Hawaii, and this guy can take care of you. So I took off, I arrived, and it was raining, and I went to the Rainmaker Hotel, which was, at that time, and still is, well, it's not active now in Pongo, but it's, you know, Pongo is kind of the capital of American Samoa. And when I arrived, the room that I had, by that time it was getting a little shabby. It had been quite a nice hotel at one time, but it was definitely on its way down. But I arrived and there's this squash frog right on the steps, and my son's with me and he says, that isn't a very good omen. That's not a very good omen. And turned out it's probably true. But anyway, the next day was the wedding, and it was raining, of course. And it was being held at a small Methodist church, and I mean really tiny. You've probably never been in a church that small. And it's in the middle of the jungle, and the jungle is just filled with these beautiful tropical flowers and so on. It's raining. And the only people who could be in this little church for the wedding were the parents of the bride and the parents of the groom and relatives. So there were just very few of us in this very tiny church, and there were windows all the way around, and outside all of the people who were interested, they're all peering in the window along with a big pig who was out there looking in the window. And inside the church it was decorated, big bouquets of plastic flowers. The 6 bridesmaids and the 6 groomsmen. The groomsmen are all wearing their white dinner jackets, you know, formal tuxes with their plastic boutonnieres. All of the girls, who I'm sure never were used to walking in high heels whatsoever, but they all were teetering around in high heels, and they had beautiful dresses on, big bouquets of plastic flowers, beautiful plastic flowers around their hair. Anyway, the organist is playing a small pump organ with his feet, and he's wearing his lava cloth, you know, it's split up the sides, and he's pumping away on the organ playing, and this is the wedding march, was Onward Christian Soldier. I had not eaten for, at that point, probably, I guess, maybe 4 or 5 days at that point. So, I mean, I was on a trip of my own. It was just so surreal. It was just like, pig in the window, guy with his tattoos. I mean, it was just like, wow. Anyway, so afterwards, they dismissed us into the pavilion, big pavilion. And they had these thrones. They were woven thrones. And they were spaced maybe about 4 or 5 feet apart. And I had a throne. I was sitting next to a man who had the most amazing tattoos that started down to his ankles. And they just went up his ankles, and his lava cloth was split up to wherever. And the tattoo, and I'm just sitting there going like, whoa, whoa. And he turns around and he said, how did David and Faye 2 meet? And I'm just stunned because I haven't spoken to anybody since I've been there. And this is the first guy who's actually even spoken to me. And so we talked, and he had actually gone to Berkeley. He was the lieutenant governor for the island, and he had been in law school there in Bolt Hall. And we had a very nice talk, and as it turned out, in my whole time that I was there, he was really the only man that I actually had a real conversation with. Because at this pavilion with all these people seated around, each of us had a table in front of us, and it had cakes and pastries, fruits. It was just filled with food. Well, of course, I was not interested in the food, but that was what it was all about, food. And we went from there then to the reception. And the reception was held in this huge hall, much bigger than we're in right now. And it was set up with a great big U kind of thing. And it had 3 wedding cakes. And they were not on the ground, but they were elevated. But every one of the wedding cakes, the 3 wedding cakes, were as tall as I am. I mean, they were that tall. They were layered cakes. And the first one was all decorated with pink flowers and so on. The next one was all yellow flowers. And the next one was all blue flowers. But it was all out of frosting. It was just these amazing cakes. Never seen one like them before or since. And we were sitting at this youth-side table. Well, one of the things in Samoa that I learned was that the way that you show your status and your prestige and so on is not by what you have, it's by what you give away. And so at this particular reception, this is the chance for our chieftain to show his generosity. And so one of the things that they would do, and I have a piece of the material, and they would have, I'll give this to Linda. Okay. And the girls would be outside, and they would have their fabric kind of thing, and they would come running through, carrying the fabric, holding it up, and then they would gather it up and take it, and they would put it in front of one of the other sub-chiefs kind of thing. And they just kept running in with these, beautiful fabrics. I acquired one, but some of these chiefs got many, things of fabric piled up in front of them. And then, even more important than the fabric, are what they called their fine mats. And a fine mat is kind of just a woven material with kind of, fringes that come off of it. Nothing really very fancy, except for the fact that you can't buy them and you can't sell them. They can only be acquired by being given away. So again, the girls would unravel, they'd have their mats, and they would run in with the mats, they would wind them up, and these would just pile up in front of these, in front of the table, in front of these people. And you could just look around and basically kind of see somebody's, status kind of like how many mats they had been given and so on. And then it was time for speeches. And the speeches were all in Samoan, so it wasn't something where I can tell you what they were talking about. But my mother was somebody who was always a public speaker and very comfortable being in front of audiences, so she decided she would stand up and she would speak to everybody and thank them and appreciate them and so on. So she stood up to give her a little speech, and the man stood up next to her and put his hands on his shoulders and just put her back down in her seat. My mother, she wasn't about to, she stood up again. He stood up again. Mother, no, we can't do this. So she didn't give her speech, but it was time to eat and eat and eat. And there was not only a big plate in front of me with, I can't even tell you whether it was potato salad, and it was macaroni salad, and it was chicken and ham, and, all kinds of stuff. It was just food. And in front, and this is unbelievable, but in front there was a box in front of each of us, at least this big, in front of each of us. And in that it had a full ham, it had a full lobster, it had a full chicken, it had more food. You couldn't have put more food in there. And behind my chair was a big plastic, I don't know how many gallons that is, but anyway, of salt beef right behind my seat. And every guest there had one of these. Now, I didn't realize that probably my son had paid for most of this because I didn't know that there had been kind of a dowry, that he had to come up with a certain amount of money. He didn't tell me about that. I learned about this later. But he had to come up with a certain amount of money for the family. And he'd also had to have a special, and it was cash, it had to be money, to his bride. And so, when he met his bride, she was so proud to show him what she had gotten for the money that he had given her. And what she had done was, she had gone and she had had the front of her teeth taken, and they had taken out a diamond out of her teeth and inserted a gold diamond between her teeth, and it was a diamond-shaped thing. So that when she smiled, she had this big gold diamond right between her teeth.
What?
Yeah. I think he knew then that he really, truly was having a different kind of a cultural experience. because she basically cried from the time that we were at the reception. She was doing the hula, and in Samoa you don't do the hula with your hips. The hips don't move. She was down on her knees and she was doing a hula, but the tears were just rolling down her face. And it was just like, oh God, I feel terrible. And so they had taken my son, he had taken off of his white dinner jacket, and he looked really very quite nice and that. Well, they'd taken him aside and they greased him up. And he was not terribly tan at that time. He was kind of like a big, and they had been feeding him, so his food was really out there. And they had a lavender lava cloth, and they carried him in on their shoulders in this lavender lava cloth. Again, it was so surreal. It was just, I could never imagine that, mother of the broom, that was just like, oh. Anyway, I turned to the man that was sitting next to me, and I said to him, all of this food is, we're staying at the Rainmaker, we don't have any way to use this food, I hope you'll find somebody that can use it. And he looked at me, his eyes narrowed, and he looked at me, he said, there is no one in Samoa that is hungry. And he turned away and he never spoke another word to me the whole time, which was kind of awful. Anyway, every man there had to dance with me. I danced with every single man. I was out there, and I had learned that I could get away with drinking a little bit of pineapple juice without setting off my thing. So I could drink water and pineapple juice, and I danced and I danced and I danced until I was danced out. Believe me, I was. Anyway, that night, went to bed, woke up early in the morning, and it was right before dawn, and I thought, well, I'm going to walk down on the ocean, down to the beach, because we were right there. And I said, and watch the sun come up. And there was nobody else around. I mean, I just had it all to myself. So I walked down to the beach, and I'm standing there, and I'm looking out at the horizon. The bay there, Pongo, was really quite beautiful. And the sun was starting to come up, and I thought, well, I'll do a little bit of my yoga salutation to the sun. So I had started, and I kind of faced the sun, and I reached up, and I reached back, way back. And then I came forward, and I'm bending forward, and I'm down here, second part of salutation. And all of a sudden, it was just like I had sand in my mouth and in my throat. And the saliva gland cleared as that stone dissolved right in my throat. Mm. And I just swallowed all of that sand, and I was done, but I left Samoa that day. So that's my Samoan remembrance. We planned that.
Sorry about that.
How exciting!
Yeah. I just got I'm all.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Speakeasy VIII. We're competing today with the rain and with football, and that just means that the audience is a really important part of this one, so you're all going to have to just be extra loud today. Yeah! Yes. All righty. Putting this together has really been something because of COVID, it's really been 3 years since we've done a live production. Last year we did a virtual production that was recorded, and I understand is back up on YouTube. And I do want you to know that yesterday's and today's performance will both be up on YouTube, so you'll have a chance to see it there afterwards, where it will live forever. Anyway, we've been meeting, as I said, for many years. It started out with Don and Ann Sampson were the ones who kind of started the program, and they did kind of a very strict formulaic way of doing monologues, and we were all limited to 5 minutes, and we had certain kinds of topics. Well, over the years, we've gotten to the point where we've said, well, it's okay. You can maybe have 6 minutes or 7 minutes, or maybe you can have a different topic or that type of thing. So we've opened it up to the point where it's kind of free form. So this week, between Sunday and Wednesday, I had a number of people that for really legitimate and good reasons had to cancel. And there are people who've done it with me for years and years. A woman who comes over from the coast, and we rehearse together. Someone who comes from Ukiah, who's always done it. Just some of these people. And for, as I said, for a variety of reasons. And it was like, oh my gosh, don't tell me it's all going to fall apart on me the week that we're going to do it. But people have stepped up, and even at the very, very last moment, we pulled people in. And I think we've really made it work, and I'm very pleased about that. So if you haven't already, please turn down or off your cell phones. And we want to give credit to our underwriters, North Coast Financial Group, and the Community Foundation, who has helped us through their granting process, keep things alive. And also Donna Viano, who made a very generous bequest to the theater that kind of helped keep things going over these last few years. So we appreciate all of them. And they've also asked me to make an announcement that the museum is doing a rather interesting program. It's called Stone Stories. And I didn't realize that apparently there are a number of people who are buried up in our local cemetery who have some illustrious pasts. And some of them, I think, even maybe not terribly legal pasts, but they're bringing these people's lives to life. And so they're looking for people who would like to be participants in that. And so if you feel like you'd like to bring one of these illustrious characters from the past, they are having auditions. And there's information about it out in front in one of the posters that's up there. So if that's something that interests you, check it out. Now, excuse me, each person today, and we're going to try to stay in this area because it is being recorded, and each person is going to introduce themselves. They'll give you the topic, and in the past we've had things like a hook where if somebody went on too long, we said, okay, and we just drag them off. We won't be doing that today, but if you hear me going, you might realize that you might need to wind it up a little bit. But I don't expect to have to do that today. And let's take it away. And Dickey.
Well, hi. My name is Dickey Weinkle, and I have to be careful about not standing like I'm guarding the Queen's coffin. Yeah. All right. So, why did Captain Hook cross the road? Get to the second-hand store. So, the name of my talk is "It Seemed Like a Good Idea at the Time," and each of us has a few of those stories. This is mine. March 12th, 1963. I had turned 16 9 days prior and got my driver's license, which in Miami, that was a big deal. My dad had bought a 1963 split window Corvette. First one in Miami, silver with a red leather interior, 4-speed. It's fabulous. On Monday, he went away on a business trip, the 11th. And on Tuesday morning, I made the decision to drive his car to school. And I did. I had track practice after school, so I wasn't done till around 5 o'clock. And then the sun was setting, it was getting, starting to get a little dusky. I'm coming home. Well, we lived off of US 1, Dixie Highway. I come down the highway to 17th Avenue, and there's a stoplight there. A half a block up, there's a 45-degree turn off the highway, and then a 45 left back, which is kind of like a frontage street to get into our subdivision. So I come at 17th Avenue, the light turns green, and I just hammer that car. I come up to that 45-degree right, a half a block up, and I make the turn, and then I go back to turn left to continue on the road, and I spin the car. The back right of it catches a palm tree, and it just shears off the back of the car. I get out, a lot of noise. Neighbors are coming out. Well, everybody knew me, and they're all, yeah. Motorcycle cop comes up and starts quizzing me, starts writing out, a citation and a report and everything. I look over his shoulder and I'm looking back up the highway, and there at 17th Avenue and Dixie Highway is my mother's car. She had gone to the airport to pick my dad up from his business trip. And here they come. They come a half a block. They make that half right. And I see my dad. He's sitting in the car like this. He's tired. I see him do this. Well, they pull up. My dad gets out of the car. He looks at the cop. He looks at me. And that's the end of Act 1. Act 2. Act 2 comes under the term of, it's who you know. Everybody knows somebody that knows somebody, yes? Okay. 30 days later, I go to traffic court. My dad takes me. We go into the courtroom. There's traffic court. There's about 20 people sitting out in the audience out there. And we walk in, and the judge looks up, and he goes, Mel Weinkle. And my dad goes, Judge Barrett. And I go, they know each other. This is great. So the judge says, come on up. So we go up, and he says, hey, come back in about an hour. I'll be finished with my docket, and we'll talk about what we need to talk about. So my dad and I go out, and we have, we get some breakfast. We come back in an hour, and the judge is finishing up. And my dad tells me, I said, how do you know the judge? He says, we've been Rotarians together for years. Well, I don't know if you know, but at a Rotary Club, if you get a new car, you get fined. So everybody in my dad's Rotary Club, they knew about his Corvette. Okay, so we go back, and then the judge says, okay, come on back. And we go back into his chambers, and he goes over, he takes his robe off, and he hangs it up on the coat rack. And he sits down and he picks up my file. And he opens it up and he says, your kid wrecked your Corvette? And my dad says, yeah. So my dad says, so what do you usually do in a case like this? The judge says, well, it's right by the law. He'll go to traffic school for 3 Monday nights, and then we'll suspend his license for 30 days. And my dad says, Fred, do you think you could suspend his license for 6 months? And Judge Barrett said, sure. It seemed like a good idea at the time.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ursula Schlicting.
Hi, Ursula.
And my story will be about Shenyang in Chicago. Well, I was 4 days on a trip to Chicago on the train. And when I arrived there, I decided to walk to the main station. Didn't realize it was about 2 miles. And halfway there, somebody came up behind me and said, hi, Mom. I looked at him. I didn't even recognize him. He had long hair, a grizzly beard, and he looked like Esau out of the Bible. I recognized his voice and he said, oh, hi, Misha. Good to see you. Then he took my luggage, what I had around my neck, and we went to the main station, got my other luggage from the carousel, and then we went home. And about that following weekend, my son says to me, get your best dress on, we're going out. Okay. So he took me to my favorite Ethiopian restaurant, and they had our usual big platter of, looked like pizza, but it wasn't. It looked like little tiny holes stuck all over around it, and it looked like buckwheat flour, which was dark. And in it was, up here was meat, and over here was some cheese, and down here was some meat, and over here would be some vegetable. And you take a piece and you eat it by your hands. You could also eat with fork, but we did the traditional way eating there. Then all of a sudden, after dinner, we went over to the theater, and it had a great big sign saying Shenyang. I always wanted to see Shenyang, but I didn't think we were going to go see it because it's so expensive. We walk into the theater, and it looked like a palace. I mean, it was gorgeous. Thick carpeting all over the place, and then we finally got seated, and the carpets were red, the curtains were red, and gold all over, gold decorations, just immaculate. I always thought it was in the palace. It was even more beautiful, I guess, in the palace. And well, anyway, after a while, we had the orchestra played, and there were Chinese instruments and also American instruments, modern instruments, as I call them. And they were really beautiful, those oriental instruments. Then all of a sudden, after the orchestra, the man and the woman came on, and the man spoke in English. Every performance that was put on was in our language versus English, and then the Chinese woman came on, and she said it in the same thing in Chinese, so I got to hear it in both languages. And the first scene was immaculate. It had trees and birds flying there, and the birds were sitting in the trees twittering, and there was a man on the boat and going down a river, and there was a waterfall, and there was another waterfall, and then all of a sudden the second scene was very heartbreaking. They had the girl had her 16th birthday party, and there were some friends there. And the father came home from work, dead tired, and he says he got a phone. As soon as he walked in the door, he got the phone call that he had to go back to work, and he already said, I work triple shift. I have to stay home with my daughter instead of 16th birthday. I don't care. You come to work. So with all the debate and everything, he took off, and the children were home alone. And all of a sudden, the Red Army came in and killed every child that was around there, the daughter and all her best friends. So when the father came home, he came into a bloodbath, and the Red Army came along and tortured him, and then they killed him. And it's, part of it was on the screen, part of it was on the stage. And I'm glad that was a very short scene because I wouldn't have taken it any longer. And then we brought, the jumps, they were just jumping high and jumping over this way, and it was just immaculate. And the costumes were out of this, they were just gorgeous. They were in different colors, and they had stars, dancing with stars, and just the scenery was just undescribable, beautiful. If I ever had a chance to see it again, I would. I don't care where it is. I would just, even if I have to walk, I'd go see it again. They were just immaculate. TV couldn't even bring it that good at all as it would in real life. Thank you very much.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah, I got it.
Podium
for you.
Podium moving.
Go.
Where do you want this podium, sir? Okay, right there. Very good. All right.
Right. My name is Bill White, and the following pieces come under a title I gave it, Musings of the 11th Hour. With memory gone and death hailing, so it is I'll be reading. So my first piece is kindergarten. People think I'm joking when I say kindergarten was the height of my academic life. When I left innocence and the imaginative world and led down the hall to the first grade, I came into a regimented world of desks and straight rows all directed to the front, where our attention had to be as in a boardroom. I felt out of place, and I was to feel so for long after until I could reflect and see myself on the road less traveled, which has made all the difference. All I get on in life as a real latecomer, finally able to hail my awakening. I'm inspired by Tim Wu saying, older Americans may be better equipped for serious thinking, as we can stand to be bored for more than a second. I'm from another time, and I didn't grow up with smartphones, along with the stress and the immediacy of life. Now, John O'Donohue, the notable Irish poet, said taste is one of the casualties of our modern world, since we are under such pressure and stress. We have so little time to taste the food we eat. Some say food is love. He said we have lost a sense of ritual, presence, and intimacy that were elemental in any meal. With this in mind, when passing a McDonald's, I'm seeing a world of lonely, quick food that my parents were spared of. O'Donnell goes on to address something that puts me at ease. Yes, when he said the fast food metaphor is also mirrored in our language. He said the tongue is also an organ of speech, and many of the words we use are the fast food variety in our rapid world. Well, since I've always felt my voice to be slower than the norm, I was gratified to hear it might have value of its own, as I'm looking at the hidden value of silence now, which seems a step into the darker unknown that breeds silence. I'm hearing that mystery arises in these shadow landscapes, and I'm learning through O'Donohue that the value of making space between our words in deeper conversation. And philosopher Mark Kinwell speaks about the most successful performers on Talk TV, the ones with the the ones with the truth, but are often the ones with the sharpest tongue. I've thought about this listening to some who have a snappy response, answers on the tip of their tongue. I don't want to be smart and sharp, only to have a bit of wisdom when I depart. I'm still searching and have come to a vulnerable space where I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But at the same time, I feel liberated being in my own rhythm with scary, creative options. Nevertheless, I find it a blessing to have a partner. A third person, someone to help with eyes on the road during these daunting times. So Dan comes along with me on whatever road I'm traveling. He happens to be invisible. He speaks through me, and as body goes, he remains near, reminding me to keep eyes on the road when traveling my road and my life. I have another piece here, and it's called The Long Dark Road, and I don't know how it got here. It's just some other part of me was speaking to me, and I was just writing on automatic. The long dark road. I'm showing you what you have been going through to get to you know where. Only you can make some sense of this. Yes, it's mystery, and you will have a hard time putting language to it. But you must trust it is truly your path. You're being loyal to yourself, going step by step. Yes, you'll get out of step because you will be dealing with both worlds, the inner and the outer. You will be waterline. This is the place of entry. I come to you now because you have left the door open. And this is your time. Yes, you have been a slow one, but you have respected and are now giving an offering with your words, unknowingly following the dark way, loving the ambiguity of it all. It is the unlit way down through the valley where the soul thrives in the moist and imminent. The angels find you hidden there with messages of love and oneness with all, though often needing to raise their voices, you being in a melancholic daze. And as the poet Rumi says, it is the ferment of love that completes the wine. I once so being there to taste it. I'd like to finish with a poem. It comes to me out of the blue, like poems do. It's seeming that poetry can slip in the back door, even with a failing mind. So this one came to me, entitled, Oh, Where Silence Goes. Oh, so steeped in dailiness of everyday slow that fixes my days in predictable ways. I long to leave from such constant needs, if only to rest where silence goes, and darkness shows that restful way, where words may never go. I lose myself in valleys deep, in melancholic days. I go to reap some darker light, where glow of moon restores my sight, and grants to me that silent light.
Wow.
Good job. That's your next poem.
Hi, my name is Kelli. My story today, I'm going to share with you an event that was not so eventful. So I'm calling it a powerful close call, because it was a very close call. It happened recently. I woke up just as normal from a very sound, restful sleep, and my husband said to me there was a fire. And I said, when? Where? That's news. And he began to tell me there was, after he'd come to bed, there was a fire, and I slept through it. And I said, okay. So when he told me when I saw the details of what happened after I went downstairs and he told me the whole story, it hit me that my life had gotten saved again. So what happened was, he came to bed that night. I'd already been asleep. And when he laid down, his eyes were still open and the bedroom door was open. And he saw the mirror over our dresser, a flash in that reflection of a flash and some flickering light. And he's laying in bed going, that's not correct. So he got up and he walked down to the downstairs and he looked and he saw flames coming from the floor to the ceiling. And he went over to him and found a basket with my backpack in it, burning. And so he grabbed it, the handle of the basket, and he pulled it around the table towards the door, opened the door, moved the basket out, and saw a fire extinguisher and put the fire out. So what I found when I woke up was fire extinguisher chemical all over the deck. My basket, a dog toy basket with my backpack in it, melted, just all melted. And I was trying to figure out what was in my backpack that caught fire. What did I have in there? And I thought about these little batteries that I had for a vaping, a smoking device. I thought it must have been those. But when I opened the backpack and I was looking, I found the little safety case that they gave me when I bought those batteries. They said, keep them in the case, they're dangerous. And they were there intact in their safety case. So it wasn't those. And so I saw the flame marks on the wall. I saw a little bit of melted char on the carpet and a little toastiness on the curtains. And I thought, gosh, that could have been so much worse. That carpet could have been synthetic. That curtain could have been synthetic. The backpack could have been directly on the floor and not movable. The fire extinguisher could have not been there, or it could have been dead, or flat, air out. All these things lined up just right, because above where that burning was happening was where I was sleeping in my bed. And I got really emotional about it. I said, wow, that could have went really sideways. That could have went so much worse. And I felt emotional that my life was saved and that you should really appreciate your time here on earth and know that it's really fragile. And we found a battery like this is what caused the fire. It had been sitting in the windowsill above the backpack. And I guess the sun was beating down on it all day, making it extra charged or something, because it exploded and the innards of the battery like this, the innards of the battery were just out. And I could see that char mark on the window was where the battery was when it blew up and landed in my backpack, catching it all on fire. But I didn't die. I didn't die. And I lived. My husband saved my life that night. He didn't panic, and all those things lined up. And I called my mom and I said, Mom, my life got saved again. You're not going to believe what happened. There was a fire. And we flipped the rug over so the melted part doesn't show. And, we swept all that chemical up off the deck, and there's still a char mark out there that I walk over every day. Every day I walk by that black mark on the deck to know that it could have been a lot worse. I could have died. But I didn't. So I'm going to live every day like there's a reason I'm here. My life got saved again. So
No.
Okay, folks, the person who follows Kelli is...
No.
Come on, folks. I think it's going to be Barbara. And by the way, since I'm interrupting you at this point, we did do an intermission last night, but I think we're going to run it straight through today.
Okay.
So, Barbara, you're on.
Okay.
Yeah. Holy cow!
I'm going to do a little change from last night. I'm going to reprise a program that I did the last time. It was done on YouTube. I've never seen it, so I don't know how it was. But I'm going to go ahead and do the same one again. And this is sort of, I think it's my way of getting through life in a positive way, because I'm sometimes not the most positive person. But this helps me on a daily basis when I'm encountering whatever is out there that challenges me. And we're all challenged in lots of different ways. But my motto is, there's a song in my heart. And I truly believe that there's always a song. And everything comes down to a melody and lyrics. One that often resonates with me is zippity-doo-dah, my, oh my, what a wonderful day. And you all know the rest of that song. And happy talking, happy talk about things you like to do. Now that song comes from South Pacific. My dad fought in World War II and ended up as a POW in a German camp. I was there for nearly 2 years. And he was just shy of 6 feet tall, and he weighed 160 pounds when he left the war. He was a navigator and went through several bombing missions over Germany. His crew and he were shot down over Italy. And you'd think that was wonderful. They were safe. But no. Italian partisans handed them over to the Germans. And Daddy endured dysentery from like the second month he was there until the end of the war. Came home weighing 105 pounds. And when he got off the train, my mother did not recognize him. So in honor of Daddy, ain't no vice. Because he did learn German. My father was multilingual. He learned German and was able to communicate with the guards while he was there. And so it was actually an okay, in the end, experience. He never talked about it, but he did survive and came out okay. As a child of the 50s, I don't know how many of you are children of the 50s, but I had an undiagnosed learning disability and never knew why I couldn't concentrate. Never was able to concentrate. And luckily, I think I was able to get through school because I had good teachers and I evolved, went to college, everything was great. But in not knowing how to study and never being able to concentrate, I used to always dust yourself off, pick yourself up, and start all over again, and did that on a day-to-day basis. And before I met my husband, I was 19 when I met my husband, but I don't know about you girls. From the time you're 15 until back then, you are always on the lookout for that guy. And I was hoping to find a nice man to end up with. And I did. But my theme song in looking for him was to dream the impossible dream. Because it was pretty near impossible to think of the best man you could ever find. But I did happen to find a really good man. And our theme song throughout our marriage is he would walk in the door. Hey, good looking. What you got cooking? How about cooking something up with me? And we had a really good marriage for 2.5 years. We didn't have any children. That was really the reason, frankly, why we decided to get married. We both wanted to have children. So 2.5 years into the marriage, I had a wonderful bouncing baby boy. It was my parents' first grandchild. But my mother, who had to work really hard to have a son, my father wanted a son so bad. She went through 9 pregnancies, and finally, the 5th born child, she had a son. And it was really interesting. We sang Hallelujah when he was finally born. And actually, we lived in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. That's where I'm from. Spent 57 years in Baton Rouge. And we didn't have AC until my brother was born. So hello, we called him the Messiah. And it was a hallelujah moment. But my mother, in experiencing having a firstborn grandson, was not thrilled. You know, she didn't come to the hospital. She just didn't want to admit that I had been so lucky. Though I wasn't, you know, she definitely loved me. She just was not happy that I had had this boy when she had to work so hard. So, don't cry out loud. You know, I would tell Mom, come on. You know, I'm sorry. Here he is. Life was but a dream. And my little boy, he had this mobile over his bed, it's all airplanes. Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. He used to sing that every time that mobile went around because that was the thing. And then we had a precious little girl. Lucky with a boy and a girl. There we have a little man. And I was so proud and happy to have her and him. And our marriage, I was really blessed. All these people had a very boringly happy marriage. And some people just never have had that sort of relationship. I was very blessed, and we were very blessed. And my song was, I'd do anything for you, dear, anything for you, mean anything to me. And he did. And then mandatory seatbelts came out. The year was 1984. My kids got in the car and said, Mom, you're not wearing your seatbelt. We learned today that you're supposed to wear seatbelts. So that day on, I had to wear a seatbelt. And not, as we were going around corners, just tell the kids who were standing up in the back seat, hold on. Because that's what I did up until we had to wear seatbelts. But love was a really splendid thing. And those 2 kids grew into teenagers, and adolescence reigned. And it was, take out my finger in the trash! They were great, though. They did end up doing really well. And then as my parents aged and they passed away, it was time for which is sang at my mother's funeral. My father was an atheist, so, you know, of course, we weren't going to sing that. But my mother wanted that at her funeral, so I sang that for her. And then Ronnie and I, my husband and I, we had several more wonderful years together, and then he was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And it was everywhere. And blessedly, I had a year in which to say goodbye. And then as he was dying, you'll never walk alone. And then in the end, grief took hold, and it endured like a really dark cloud over me for 10 long, gruesome years. And I don't know if anyone else has ever had that experience, the grief being so overwhelming, but it was. And the song at that time was Crazy. I'm crazy for feeling sorry. And I really channeled Patsy Cline. Love that song. But then, time goes on, and the beat goes on, and the beat goes on. And one thing that I do now, I live here now. I lived in Baton Rouge 57 years. Don't want to ever go back there except to visit, because, hello, the food is fabulous. In New Orleans and Baton Rouge, restaurants on every corner that you just call. And my theme song now, as I prepare food for my kids and my grandkids, is food, glorious food. I just want to say, really, music gets you through every day. It does me. Music, music, music.
Like the one he did. Ah, it's very symbolic for you, right? I'm a sweet old man. My up, Emmy?
That could be a union violation.
Okay.
Introduce us.
I'm Finn Shipp.
And I'm Jeff Shipp. And we're going to talk about movies. A few years ago, Finn and I started a tradition. We wanted to watch a movie every single night we were together. Now, he spends the night with me on Saturday nights, Monday nights, and Tuesday nights. So we came up with rules for this game. Finn, do you remember the rules?
On Saturdays, it was my pick. On Tuesdays, it was a sequel or mutual. Mm-hmm. And on Mondays, it was his pick.
Yes. So, when it was his pick, we would watch, Rainbow Bright cartoon versus Godzilla, something silly. We'd have our sequel nights, Back to the Future 2, but on my nights, we'd watch anything I wanted. He had to watch it. One night, I said, we're going to watch Jaws. Well, I told my family before we did that, and they were insistent that we shouldn't watch it. But that wasn't the first horror movie we watched together. The story really begins on how we watched horror movies. Well, tell them where the story begins on watching horror movies.
The story begins, we were in the Noyo men's bathroom.
The Noyo men's bathroom. A horror story. No. It was just two men at the end of a film standing next to each other like we are right now, shoulder to shoulder, as you do, contemplating life. And if you look up at those urinals, what do you see, Ben?
You see lined across the roof, old B movies.
Old B movies on the wallpaper. So we were reading them. Do you remember some of them?
Them.
Godzilla.
The Blob.
Creature from the Black Lagoon and Frankenstein and so many others. I said, I haven't seen some of these movies. We need to be watching these movies. So we started to watch old B horror movies. Do you remember the first one we watched?
The Blob.
Yes, with Steve McQueen. Fantastic. Now, we loved The Blob. It was a lot of fun. But what we realized as we started watching horror movies is you learn life lessons from them. We learned something from The Blob. What did we learn?
If a thing falls down from space, don't poke it with a stick.
Obvious. Right? Beginning of the movie. This meteor lands, a guy pokes it and it eats him. Obvious. Don't do that from now on, right? We watched others too. We watched The Fly and help me, and that kind of thing. We watched Godzilla. All the Godzillas, but starting with the original Tokyo or Japanese Godzilla. We got some great stuff from that.
Yeah. It's actually a commentary on the nuclear weapons used against Japan.
That's right. It was actually created a great dialogue with us. We talked about World War II. It was made right after the end of World War II, and the beginning of the original Godzilla is unbelievable. A woman standing on a beach, just clawing at her face in fear, screaming, but she's not looking at the monster. You haven't even seen Godzilla yet. What is she looking at?
She's looking at dead tuna.
Dead tuna floating ashore, which Japan was dealing with at the time because of us blowing up so many nuclear weapons around their islands. It was killing their fishing industry. And this was an artistic way of them dealing with that tragedy. So we talked about that. But eventually, we did get to Jaws. And my family, like I said, they said, no, he'll never swim again. It's the most terrifying film ever. Don't make him watch it. I said, no, I think he can handle it. I said, there's really one only gory scene I can think of. I bet you're thinking of it now. What is the most gory scene in Jaws?
When the captain gets eaten.
The captain getting eaten, yes. Now, so I pulled it up on YouTube and I said, man, this is the worst part of Jaws, gory-wise. What do you think? No, what did you think when you saw it?
I thought the shark looked just like a silly robot.
It does. It looks just awkwardly opening and closing its mouth, and the captain's doing a good job acting. But, So, but the thing about it was, Jaws isn't scary because of the shark. The Jaws is scary why?
When you can't see him.
That's right. It's the suspense, not knowing where's it at. Is it coming for me? And those two notes, doo 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 doo. Oh, to get your heart going, right?
Yeah.
So in the end, we did watch Jaws, and what do you think?
I thought it was amazing.
That's right. But we took that life lesson about the fear of suspense, of not knowing, and there's a lot of things that we took from that. You want to give an example of, we came up with a name for dealing with things as you grow up. What do we call it?
The monster under the boat.
That's right. So there are topics when you're a kid that you don't want to talk about with your parents. All of us have been there. We call those the monster under the boat, because what we found is when you actually just talk about them and you really face that shark in the face, it's not that big of a deal. Whether it's 4-letter words, and what do they mean? What happens if I say it? Or that 3-letter word. You know that one?
Sex.
That's right. So, thanks to Jaws, we had that conversation, and it went great. And we no longer are scared of that subject, and we can talk about it. And so we learned something from horror movies. But horror movies aren't the only thing we watched.
Superhero movies.
That's right. We love superhero movies. We watched all of them. What are some of your favorites?
I like the Batman and the Iron Man.
Oh, and Thor and all those Marvel films. We found that one particular thing makes superheroes better than other things. What's a good superhero feature? They have to have something.
Their vulnerability.
That's right. That's what makes us able to connect to them. That's what makes it fair. So every superhero has one. What is Superman's vulnerability?
Kryptonite.
That's right. Now, there's not a lot of kryptonite on planet Earth, so it's hard to relate to Superman. But some of the other superheroes are more relatable. For example, what about Tony Stark, Iron Man? What's his vulnerability?
His heart.
That's right. He had a bad heart, so he built that shell around him and created the Iron Man suit to keep him alive. Now, here's a tricky one. And Finn got it when I first asked him, what is Batman's vulnerability? Bruce Wayne. His emotions. That's right. He's a very troubled guy. He lost his parents when he was young, so he's dealing with a lot. So this is how we connect with superheroes, and we connect with them because we realize we're just like them. We have vulnerabilities too. So maybe that means we can be superheroes. For example, you might not know this, but Finn, when he was born, he needed open heart surgery. It was a very scary time for our entire family. But he made it through. Incredible doctors put him together just like he was Tony Stark. So maybe you're looking at the next Iron Man right here. Like I have, and like many of us have had many emotional problems in their life. And I've had a lot of work done. Like Bruce Wayne, I think I'm doing better than he is, quite honestly. But maybe I'm the next Batman. So you could be looking at two superheroes right here. So maybe horror movies and superhero movies are just garbage for the brain. But honestly, when a father and son sit down and enjoy themselves with movies over a few years, we actually learn a few things. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Thanks for coming to the show. My name is Bill Herr, and this is called Incarceration as Education. I got a DUI about 50 years ago, and the judge gave me the option between 10 days in the county slammer or a year of community service. So the idea of, hanging out in the park for a year, picking up garbage and chatting with my friends, somehow didn't have a lot of appeal. So I was freelancing at the time, so to speak, and thought, well, I'll just do the straight time. The county jail was massively overcrowded and was segregated. I was in a cell block that had honkies and Latinos in it, and blacks were in a separate cell block. And the cell block consisted of 6 cells, each of which was a 2-man cell. And so those 12 prisoners were guys that were in for a longer period of time, but there were another 20 of us who were short-timers or awaiting transport to the state prison or whatever disposition they were looking for at. And the sleeping arrangement was, in addition to those 6 cells, there was a big day room. And so the 20 of us or so who didn't have our own cell would bunk down at night in the day room. We had a big stack of naugahyde covered futon-like mattresses that we slept on. And one night, while ostensibly asleep, the 2 gangbangers next to me were talking about what they were in the Husgato for. And one of them said that he was in for 14 counts of arson. And his buddy that he was chatting with in the middle of the night said, how did that come about? And he said, well, his girlfriend had dumped him and was now consorting with another guy. And he came by her apartment one night, saw the guys, this is another Corvette story, saw the guys, his successor's brand new Corvette parked in her parking slot in the carport, together with another 20 cars or so. So he doused the Corvette with gasoline and set it on fire, called his girlfriend and said, look out your window at your car. And before the fire department got there, the whole row of cars and the carport caught on fire and destroyed 14 of them. So that was the arson charge. And the guy who's telling this story to says, oh man, what you needed to do was put a bomb in the guy's car so that you take care of him and the car. Don't call your girlfriend though. And he proceeded to describe to this guy how you make a car bomb, how you install it, what arms it, what fires it, that kind of thing. Enough detail that I was pretty sure this guy had some first-hand experience. And I began to think, well, I shouldn't be hearing this. And so I was hoping they didn't realize I was still awake. So that was one of the things I learned while in the slammer, how to make a car bomb. Not real practical knowledge, but potentially useful. The other thing I learned, though, was how to eat a grapefruit. In the slammer, they don't give you any utensils, but because a utensil can also be a weapon. But when you get a half a grapefruit, what are you going to do with it? Well, the way you eat it in jail is you take the grapefruit and kind of stab your thumb down in between the rind and the flesh at the equator. And then you start turning that hemisphere around. All the time you're driving your thumb down deeper into the fruit itself until you get down to the South Pole. And then you grab the equator and you push up on the South Pole, and it just pops up like that. You got your little bow and you got your grapefruit. You just munch out. The red one from Safeway, very sweet. Much better than in the Huscato. So that was another thing I learned. But I'd have to say the most important thing, in addition to car bombs, eating a grapefruit, that I learned in the slammer is, Lord, I couldn't live that way. It set me on a righteous path.
Yes, it did.
Thank you. And while I have your attention, I'd like to tell you briefly about something that's going on in Willits. I've always been awed by the beautiful, magnificent redwoods here within the city itself. And if you look closely over the next period of time at redwoods in the city of Willits, you may see a small ceramic sightless face. And if you see one, you're invited to take it. And let it be a reminder to you to keep your own eyes open to the wonders of nature, because a lot of that is going on here in Willits right now. If you find more than one, I'd encourage you to leave the subsequent ones hidden. But if you've got a better hiding place for it, go ahead and put it in the hiding place that you think is a more appropriate one. And if you feel inclined, put a note in saying really whatever you want, but maybe your name, maybe when you found it, that kind of thing. So, keep your eyes open. Thank you.
Good to almost see you. My name is Linda Posner, and I'm really honored, happy to be here, because here is a place we get to do a lot of loving and some laughing and some appreciating, feel some terror, feel some joy, because it's about love. We're here about love. And as Katharine Hepburn says, love has nothing to do with what we're expecting to get. Only what we're expecting to give, which is everything. What we get in return varies. It really has nothing to do with what we give. We give because we love, because we are loved and cannot help giving. I love that. I think of these little ditties, these little phrases, poems, sayings that I've said practically, well, not this one all my life, but that I say all the time. And many that, a few that I'm going to share tonight, I've basically said and remembered all my life. And for example, probably about 20 years ago, I was doing quite a bit of performing, and I would get so nervous and so scared and worried that I was going to forget everything. So I had a dream about this movement in the dream and these words that I really never understood. So I just kind of put my own words and meaning to them. And so I'm going to do it. I'm a little off balance because of the lights, but that's okay. If I fall down, I'll do a pratfall, and I'll do it very skillfully. So this was a dream I had, and I woke up, and in the dream was this image and these sounds. Well, I've done this practically every day for about the last 40 years. I mean, I just do it. I do it because it feels right to do it. I thought, what do those words mean? More brave. I thought, maybe it's about love and prayer. I don't know. But I do it every day, and I was happy to do it in front of you because I am nervous, and I am excited, and I do feel love. And speaking of love, when I was about 11, I was told in school, when we're 11 years old, what grade are we in? Is that the 5th, 6th? 6th grade. Our teacher said we have to bring in a poem or some writing. Well, I was always terrified of writing, terrified to write anything. So I was just crying, and my mother said, what's going on? And I said, well, we're supposed to write this saying or poem or something for class, and I don't know what to write about, what to do. And she said, well, what do you love most of all in your life? I said, well, horses, my horse. Because when I was 7 years old, my mother took us horseback riding. Because we had been in boarding school, my sister and I, since I was 3 and a half. And when I was 7, we came out of boarding school, and my parents wanted to do all sorts of things, ice skating, horseback riding, this and that. And I just fell in love with horses. And I said, well, riding. She said, what does it feel like when you ride? And I must have described to her what it felt like when I was riding. My mother, bless her memory, she wrote this poem. She loved to write. She wasn't scared of writing at all. She loved to write. And she wrote this poem, and I never forgot it. And I was about probably 11 years old. So I'm going to ride my horse and say this poem that my mother wrote. Hold on, I have a very small horse. Oh, but he was frisky. My mother wrote this for me. When I ride astride in my world so wide, along paths untrod, I am led by God to a special peace where trouble cease, where green grass grows and a soft wind blows. There would I stay till the ending of day, then set my horse on a homeward course, renewed self-abiding, life's meaning learned, just riding. And so I took it to class, and my teacher, my daughter Pearl, reminded me, well, Mom, that was really, it ended up being something terrible. And she was right, I forgot about this. That the teacher said to me, you didn't write this. And of course, 11 years old, I just said, well, I did. My mom helped me. She says, you did not write this. Your mother did, in front of the whole class. And I was it just was shattering to me, the lack of skill of this teacher. At the time, it was just shattering. And went and sat down. And I never forgot. I mean, that was so terrible. I did forget it. Actually, it was Pearl that said, Mom, that ended up being a really sad experience for you. And quite, my words, traumatic. And it was. So really, writing has always been terrifying to me. But I love reading wonderful writing. And I've written quite a bit from dreams, and I've read over them, and I've liked them very much. But this was a terrible experience. But I do love to sing. And I do love to ride, but I do not love to write and read it to anybody. I won't read it to anybody. Anyway, when I was about 15, living in Los Angeles, at the Masonic Temple, there was a fellow that was going to be doing some shows there. And I thought, well, that'd be fun. Maybe I'll... And so he sang this song. And I never, ever forgot it. I think I heard it like once or twice. And I never forgot this song. Come and write me a song that I can sing, where the words sometimes make me cry, with a sound as fresh as tomorrow's spring, and as warm as last July. Is there anyone here with a musical ear, and a mind that's alive and free? If you like my song, please come along and sing or write a song for me. If you like my song, please come along and sing a song or write a song for me. And the other one I like to lie down when I started. And the lights are usually off or dim, it doesn't matter. Whenever my road begins to end, whenever I've got some dreams to mend, whenever I'm tired and want a friend, you always are there. Whenever I choose to look your way, that's when my darkness turns to day. Whenever I bow my head to pray, you always are there. And if I decide I want to love and share my life with you, I call and you are there. With a love so true, whenever my road begins to end, whenever I've got some dreams to mend, whenever I'm tired and want a friend, you always are there. You always are there. I'm losing my voice, and I don't care, because you're always there. I asked Pearl, huh? Oh, I'm gonna say, oh, sure.
Rocking chair.
This is a rocking chair. There's another song that I love. I don't know if I can't get through it, though. I'll just stop and we'll all applaud each other. Somewhat there. Well, when Pearl was a baby, she's beautiful woman now here, and I used to sing her this song and rock her all the time, and I love this song. And if some of you probably know this, please join me. It's great, Barbara. I gave my love a cherry, it had no stone. I gave my love a chicken, it had no bone. I gave my love a baby with no crying. I gave my love a story, it had no end. How can there be a cherry without a stone? How can there be a chicken without a bone? How can there be a baby with no crying? How can there be a story that has no end? A cherry when it's blooming, it has no stone. A chicken when it's pippin', it has no bone. A baby when it's sleeping, there's no crying. The story of I love you, it has no
I'm going to just give a little tell you on Garrett. Garrett has been doing our videoing today, and when I was short of people, I was just saying, oh, gosh, what are we going to do? And Garrett said, you know, I've always wanted to do a monologue. And I said, you've got 5 minutes. He stepped right in. This was on last night, improvised one for us last night. He's got a different one for us today. His one last night was R, borderline X. So you will continue on that.
I always wanted to do a monologue, and funny story, I still don't have one. We're going to do this improvisational. I was asking friends and family this morning, like, what should I do? And I got from my ex-girlfriend, talk about your dog. Okay, I can find a lesson in there somewhere. So this is Shadowfax. She is like 7 or 8 now. A few years ago, we were putting in a lot of time at a house in town my dad was remodeling. And she's really good. I put the fear of Garrett into her. So she doesn't wander, she sticks around and whatnot. But the neighboring house had a dog in the yard that was very territorial, let's say. And she would spend many hours of the day running up and down the fence, taunting that dog, just yelling at it and getting up close. Oh, this is your yard, huh? No, this is my yard. And this went on for seriously like a year and a half or something like that. And I think it was probably long before there was an incident that dog was fed up with this behavior. And one day she got a little too close to the fence. And it snatched her through the fence, right over at the top of her snout, and got her by her tongue and her snout and everything. And it let her go, thankfully, but that was quite the experience. And it kind of made me think of like human behaviors. We do this a lot where we sort of taunt the fates. We go, we know what's right, we know what's wrong, and maybe we do the wrong thing anyway, And then sometimes there's ramifications for those actions, and they can hit pretty hard, and it can get bloody. And we're supposed to learn a lesson from that and not behave that way anymore. But once again, the dog is very similar to the human. Not 3 days went by, she was at the fence again, taunting this dog. It was like, did you not just experience what we experienced? And so I think that ties in a lot to how we operate as well, where, it's one thing to know what we shouldn't or should be doing. But damn, is it hard to adhere to that. My goodness. I think that's about all of my thoughts on that, but maybe really what I wanted was not to teach a lesson. maybe what I really wanted was to show you this cute little dog.
All right. I wasn't expecting this. Thank you. That was fun. Very cute. My name is Emmy Good, and my monologue is called Samoa Remembered. 1984, and my son, who at the time was about 22, was sitting at the kitchen table with a friend and spinning the globe and saying, I'm going to put my finger on the globe, and wherever it lands, that's where I'm going to go. He spun the globe, and he put his finger down, and his friend laughed. He said, that's the middle of the ocean. And my son said, no, underneath that, I'm going to Pago Pago. He did not know at that time that in Samoa that it was pronounced Pongo Pongo. But anyway, that's where he was going to go, and indeed he did. He arrived in Samoa, but his luggage never got there with him. And so he went to a little neighborhood store and he bought a bathing suit. And he kind of noticed the girl who was waiting on him, and her name was Faye too, and I think he was somewhat interested. I actually think he was going to Samoa in search of a woman, so she just was right there. Well, his luggage didn't arrive. Next day he went back, bought a little more clothing-wise, and he's really noticing her now. Well, third day, his luggage still had not arrived, but by then he'd gotten up his nerve to ask her out. So he said, could I take you out to lunch? And she said, oh, no, I cannot leave my little island. And he said, I just want to take you out to lunch. Well, he did not know that she was the chief's daughter, and there was no way that he was going to spend any time with her alone because she was the chief's daughter, although I think they probably treated most of their daughters that way. Anyway, he seemed to have a good time in Samoa. He came home, and I didn't think anything more about it until I got a phone call, and it's saying, save November 10th, because I'm getting married in Samoa. What? You don't even know this girl. I don't think you're going to spend any time alone with her. You're getting married. And he said, yes, it's the only way I'm going to be able to get her back here is to marry her. So I said, well, our business at that time was very successful, and it was very, very busy, especially around Christmas time. So I said, there just isn't any way that I'm going to be able to, come to your wedding. I'm really, really sorry, but I think it's not necessarily something I would feel real good about anyway. So I hung up. Very shortly thereafter, the phone rang, and it was my mother. And she said, of course you're going to the wedding. Meet you there. We're going to the wedding. Well, I thought, I don't have any choice in this. I'm going to the wedding. That's just the way it is. Well, a few days before I was supposed to leave, I was eating something, and all of a sudden my face just swelled up with this huge, just swollen up, and it was extremely painful. And I thought, whoa, what is this? I never had anything like that happen before. And so the next time I ate, face swelled up again, and it was just excruciating. So I thought, well, I need to see a doctor. So at that time, I didn't have a regular primary caretaker. None of us did. Anyway, I went to the Howard Hospital emergency, and I did happen to know the doctor on call. And he said, Emmy, I think that you've got a stone in your saliva gland. Kind of like people get kidney stones, but this one was in my saliva gland. Well, I'd never heard of anything like that. But I did know that any time I did have anything to eat, my face would swell up. He said, I think that we're going to have to, do some surgery on it and probably remove it surgically. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm on my way to Samoa. I don't have time to, have surgery. I can't do that. And he said, listen, this is serious. You can't just do that. I said, well, the only time it bothers me is if I eat. And I'm really familiar with fasting. At that time, I had done a lot of fasting. And so I knew what it was like to go without food. And I said, I can do that for a week. I can go without food for a week as long as I, drink a lot of fluids and water. I'll be okay. So off I went. And when I arrived, my son took me to the Rainmaker Hotel, which it had previously been the place where movie stars would go, and it had kind of Sadie Thompson. It had some, some fame. But by the time that 84 came along, it kind of was deteriorating, even though it was probably still the best place that you could go to in Pongo. Anyway, my son and I walk up to the door, and there, right on the steps, is a squished frog. It's just totally flattened, squashed frog. And my son says, "That doesn't look like a very good omen, does it?" I said, "No, it doesn't, does it, But, hey, the next day was the wedding, and the wedding, it was raining. Did I say it was raining when I got there? And it rained, and it rained, and the next morning is the wedding, and it's raining, and it's raining. And the wedding is being held in a small, and I mean really small, not much bigger than this area here, a little small Methodist church in the jungle. And you're going through all this tropical, lush, beautiful flowers, and, it was really just like being in a real jungle. It was a real jungle. And so in the little church, only the parents of the bride and the parents of the groom could be in the church. Everybody else had to be outside, even though it was raining. But there were big windows, and crowded around the windows were all kinds of people looking in the window to be able to see the wedding, along with a great big pig. I can't forget the pig that was looking in the window watching for the wedding. I mean, by this time you realize I haven't eaten for at least 4 days, and everything is very surreal anyway. But to be in this little church in the jungle. So there were 6 bridesmaids and 6 groomsmen, none of whom my son actually even knew. But they were all in their white dinner jackets and, very well dressed with plastic boutonnieres. The girls had beautiful dresses on, and they were wearing high heels. None of them had ever spent much time in high heels. They were just teetering their way around on these high heels, and they had big bouquets of plastic flowers, and they had wreaths around their head, plastic flowers, and there were big arrangements of flowers in the church, plastic, while outside the window there were all these beautiful tropical flowers. Anyway, this was high style. The organist is sitting at a little pump organ, not a very big one, and he's got a lava cloth. The men wear lava cloths. And he's sitting there pumping away on the organ, and the wedding march was "Onward, Christian Soldiers." Really was. And it was just like, okay, right. And from there, we went into a pavilion, and this pavilion, big as our theater here, kind of thing. And they had all of these thrones that were woven. Maybe you've seen them in these tropical bars and so on. But big thrones. And each of us, I had a throne, my mother had a throne. There was a man on the other side of me, throne. Several others, I presume these are other minor chiefs or something like that. We were all seated there. And in front of each of us was a little table, and on the little table was just a variety of every kind of goodie you could imagine. It was cakes and cookies and fruits. Table just loaded with this vinegar. So, of course, I'm not eating, but I am noticing, sitting next to me, the man next to me has his lava cloth is pretty well split, and I'm admiring his tattoos that start down at his ankle, and they travel, they're just solid tattoos up his leg, and I'm trying not to be too obvious about it, but I'm looking, and all of a sudden he said, "So how did David and Fatu meet each other?" And I was kind of surprised, but we had a very nice little talk, and it turns out that he was the governor of the island, and that he had attended Berkeley, and he had his law degree from Bolt Hall. He'd gone there, and so on. And as it turned out, he was, in the whole time I was there, he's the only person that I had a conversation with. Most of the people do speak English. They're bilingual. They speak Samoan and English. But I did not speak to anybody else for any length of time. So from the pavilion, we were dismissed, and we went to the reception hall. Well, the reception hall was probably twice the size of our theater. It was just immense. And everybody was there. I mean, it was just huge. And they had a great big, it was set up like a U in terms of the tables. and people were seated all around the tables. I didn't happen to notice that they were all men. The women were all sort of in the background, but I didn't think too much about that. And so when we entered, there were 3 wedding cakes, and each of the wedding cakes was taller than I am. One was pink, one was yellow, and one was blue. 3 wedding cakes, huge wedding cakes. And there was a ceremony before they started. In this ceremony, I discovered that in Samoa, that the way that you show your status and your wealth and so on is not by what you have, it's by what you give away. And so, and I really don't know the source of who was doing all the giving, but I guess it must have been Betu's father, and there would be, I'll give you this to hold. And there would be these girls who would have these long, long things of fabric, and they would come running in holding the fabric, and it was like running in, and then they would gather it up, and then they would pile it in front of one of the chiefs. And they would run in more fabric, and it was things were piling up in front of these different minor chiefs that were there. And then they started bringing in the fine mats. Now the fine mats were woven out of kind of just, they were really very simple, but they had kind of a lot of whatever you call the ends of the mats that were out there. Swishy, I would call them. Anyway, they would run fine mats in and pile those up. And I got a piece of fabric and a fine mat. I hate to tell you, I don't have my fine mat anymore. Somebody here in Willits at one time that I knew from Fiji said, "May I buy your fine mat?" And I said, "You know you can't buy it. They aren't for sale. You can only give away fine mats. You can't buy a fine mat, and I'm not selling my fine mat." Well, it did disappear, so I guess that there was no prohibition about taking a fine mat. You couldn't buy it, but you could take it. So I don't have a fine mat to share with you today. But at this table, there was speech making. I'm not sure, maybe we did the eating first, but anyway, the speech making, one man after another, and they were doing all this in Samoan, so I have no idea what they're saying, but they went on and on. Well, after the speech making, my mother stood up, and my mother was not a shy person, and she was a public speaker, so she was very comfortable being in that role. And she stood up, and she wanted to thank people and so on. The man next to her stood up, he put his hands on her shoulders, and he pushed her back down in her chair. And she looked at him, and she's going like, she stood up again, she's ready to talk. He got up again, pushed her down. Anyway, I went, Mother, no, stop. Anyway, my mother did not speak. I did not speak. Anyway, we're sitting there, food, just food galore. Potato salad, macaroni salad, probably any kind of plate with all kinds of meat, everything. You know, it's just unbelievable amount of food. And then in front of every plate where people were eating was a box, this big. And in the box was a full ham, a full lobster, a full chicken, and more food. I mean, I can't even tell you. It was just filled with food. And behind every seat where we were sitting was a bucket. I don't know whether that's a 5-gallon bucket or what it is, but anyway, it was of salt beef behind each one of us. So I'm sitting there, and there's a man on my left, and I say to him, I said, you know, my mother and I are staying at the hotel, and we just aren't going to be able to eat any of this food. You know, there's just so much food. I said, don't you think you could find someone? But he was head of the council of churches for the whole island. I didn't mention that. I said, don't you think you could find a family or some people that, you know, would really appreciate it and enjoy having this food? He turned around and he looks at me with his eyes like this, and he says, no one in Samoa is hungry. And he turned away and he did not speak to me the rest of the time. That was it. I mean, I had really, truly offended him around that. So the other thing that had to be, and I didn't know this, it happened that my son called me on the phone this morning, and he didn't even know I was doing this weekend. And I said to him, I'm doing a monologue about Samoa, and when I got to this part where it was with the God, I shouldn't have interjected this because he was telling me that I didn't realize that they had dragged him off. I knew that they brought him in and that he was wearing a lavender lava cloth and that they had greased him up. He was just glistening. And because they'd been feeding him and stuffing him for so long, his opu was, he looked like a Samoan actually. And so he said that if he didn't know they were going to do this, he said that they actually dragged him off, put up a curtain, took off all his clothes. He said they just started pulling off his suit and all that, and then greasing him down. And he said they did leave him with his underwear. He said it was just like he was, like this, and they wrapped this lavender. It looked like silk, a lavender silk lava cloth around him and carried him in. Anyway, I had no idea then that he had to kiss, and he said he kissed every man, woman, and child there. Now, I didn't see that because he just told me that today. I was not aware of it, but I was too busy because I had to dance with every man there. And I did. I danced. And I mean, I was just like, by the end of the evening and so on, it was like, I really, my feet were worn out. I was worn out. But the next morning I woke up and it was dark. Nobody was up. I went outside and I thought, I'm going to just walk down to the beach. I'm going to watch the sunrise. And Pongo has a really big bay and it's really quite a beautiful thing. So I walked down there and it was dark and I could just see the line of light just starting and pretty soon the sun starts to come up and I thought, I'm going to do my salutation to the sun, the Surya Namaskar, which is something we do in yoga. And so I'm, have my hands in Namaste and I'm contemplating the sun and the new day and feeling calm, quiet, a little tired, not even hungry anymore at this point. And as the sun comes up, I open up my arms. I can't do this fully without losing my hat. Anyway, I opened up my arms, bringing in the energy, and then I came forward, and as I was leaning forward, all of a sudden, it was just like I had sand and gravel in my mouth, and the stone in my saliva gland had dissolved. The end. I left that day. So thank you so much for being such a good audience. And not only that, I thank you. Watch your steps on the stairs. Last night, we did a little grand finale last night when we fell on the stairs, so we're not going to do that one tonight. Anyway, I thank you for being such a good audience. This has been recorded and will be up on YouTube, and we'll let you know when. So you can share with all the people what they missed today. And look forward to seeing you on Speakeasy IX. Thank you to Logan who did our lights for us tonight. Everyone had thank you to Garrett for his recording. And thank you to BAUDELAIRE who just makes it all happen. Yes. Not very.